You're still a full Wilkinson being like, trying to go drive.
Good morning.
What's the piece that?
Morning.
How is everybody today?
Good.
Good morning,
I see you guys are up and-
Mr. Wilkinson.
Hi.
Hey, I'm on the road. I should be home in the next 15 minutes, but I can just listen until I go home and get my book, okay?
No problem. How come you're on the road already? It's only 7 o'clock.
On-
I'm only kidding. That's fine. That's fine. You as soon as you get in and settle in, just let me know. In the meantime, we'll just give the others a few moments to rub their eyes, turn on the computer. Okay. Anisha, are you there?
I'm here.
Okay. How are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm just fine, just fine. Trying to keep up with you young people.
I trying to keep up with them too.
Indeed, indeed.
This good end on the road.
Yeah, can you imagine that? She's already done a million things and headed back.
I know, cause
Uh,
I then was like, I need to go on the road.
Yeah,
Don't worry, after class, I'm going back on the road again.
I know. I know that was just a quick break to doggone do something while you waited for 9:30.
Yep.
And as soon as we're done, we'll be hitting the road again. Uh, yeah, that's what being young and dealing with stuff is all about, and that's good. When I hear my son complain about the things he has to do, I said, "Boy, you haven't even seen anything yet. Just get out and do it.
Eh?
If you only you know it's ahead." So yeah, let it rip. Because I tell you, some of the things I've seen in my lifetime when I was had my afro in high school, and I'm thinking I never thought that in my entire life I'd have to deal with so much nonsense. Sorry, stuff.
Mhm. I know.
Let's call it stuff.
Stuff.
Yeah, give it a polite word, sort of. Oh man. All right. So we'll give the others a few moments. Anisha, if you need to make coffee, go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
Anishka, keep driving until you get in. I'll be back in 2 or 3 minutes. Give the others a chance to check in.
Okay.
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 Okay. Siobhan,
Hi,
how are you today?
I'm good in yourself.
Just fine, just fine. We missed you on Thursday.
Yeah, I had a lot of work to do.
I know, one of those Thursdays, yes?
Yep.
That's okay. That's all part of this, whatever this is. Lots of stuff. So, does COVID make things a little more complicated? Are you working more as a result of COVID, longer hours?
I am, unfortunately.
Yeah. Is there any way out of that, Siobhan? Like, you guys, don't forget this because of COVID, I'm not working on a plantation. Why are you asking me to do all these hours? Can you raise questions like
Uh,
that, or you're just happy to have a job?
I do ask those questions on that, but I just try to log off so I don't be so overwhelmed.
That's a good idea. Because the truth is, because you're home, there's a tendency to just naturally stay on. Well, again, it depends on the personality. For some of us, logging off is what we need to do to get a break. For others, logging off is intentional to make sure we get a break. Like, really, I'm not in the office. Great, I'm out of here. I'm going to
Yep.
lie down. All right.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I guess it has a lot to do with who we are. So if you're kind of a workaholic, you need to log off
Yep.
and take a break. Okay. Where do you work, by the way, Siobhan?
Providence Advisors Limited.
Oh, yes, Providence Advisors. Always something to do. What kind of company is that?
That's like an investment slash pension.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Now I remember. It never ends there.
Nope.
I know. Companies like that, you can work 24 hours and never be done with stuff for some strange reason. So I quite understand. Okay. So Shadell and Joan, I guess they'll join us. Who's Mick?
Shadell is here. I'm here.
Shadell, you there? Oh,
Yes,
that big S is for Shadell?
yes, that's me.
Okay. Okay, Shadell. Welcome aboard. I know Anishka was trying to get to her computer. So Anishka, where are you these days?
I am about 5 minutes away. So I guess we'll answer the questions until I don't know, go into that.
You done with your questions already?
Yes, sir. I did the questions, but my book is home.
Oh, well, okay. We'll see how it goes. Cause well, here's what we'll do. We'll, like my grandmother used to say, we'll fan around a little bit until you get home. And then if your 5 minutes turns into 15 minutes, then we'll say to hell with Anishka. Uh, not really to hell with Anishka. You know what I mean, Anishka. And then
I know what you mean. I know.
and we'll just work it, see how it goes. Okay. Um, while we wait for all that stuff to happen, because whether you like it or not, I have three what I think not only interesting video clips, but also relevant to some of the things we were discussing in terms of um, special assets that we talked about on Thursday. All those special assets that trustees run away from. Only special trustees take on special assets. I think you should have figured that out by now. The typical trustee is not necessarily interested in taking on special assets. Only those who specialize, I suppose, in special assets. Does anybody have any idea why? Why do trustees generally avoid special assets?
Because they don't understand how to deal with them. They don't have this expertise
Yeah, they
to
don't always
manage it or
understand how.
invest it or sell it. It's difficult.
Correct. They don't always have the expertise and the skills to deal with it. That's the first problem. And then those trustees that oftentimes have certain expertise, they still sometimes avoid them
Too much,
for what other reason?
it's too much work. Too much to
Yes,
deal with.
yes, yes. RISK, all capitals. Okay. It is very risky messing around with special assets. Granted, the returns are very high. Like any other economic investment concept, the higher the risk, the higher the expected returns, the lower the risk, the lower the expected returns. However, since we know that special assets consist of what kind of assets? What are some examples?
Paintings,
Paintings,
jewelries,
jewelry,
antiques, artifacts.
yes. Is it costume jewelry?
No.
Not at all. We're talking about jewelry in the gazillions of dollars. Okay, for sure. What about stamp collections?
Yes, that too.
Yeah. What is the great risk of having a stamp collection? Like once you take on a stamp collection worth $50 million, for example, like the big question for the trustee is what the hell do I do with this? And if something goes wrong, I'm going to drown. And my company's gonna go under because they're gonna sue me to hell. So
Hmm.
what is the big thing that the trustee has to consider with regards to, let's say, a stamp collection? Because somebody has to do it.
I would
First of
think
all, they have to
everybody
keep the
do.
stamps dry.
First of all, to keep those bloody stamps dry.
Right.
If any of you have ever had a stamp collection as a child growing up, you'd see very quickly that if you don't keep them dry, the moisture will destroy them as it destroys any kind of paper. Okay, so yeah, you have to find that right temperature somewhere to keep those stamps dry because for each one of them that gets ruined, it can cost you a whole ton of money as a trustee. Then, after you find a way to keep them dry, you have to keep them what? Protected.
Hmm.
Because people are always looking to thief stuff. TIEF, I think it is. That's
What
being
kind,
malicious.
Mr.
Right?
Wilkinson, what kind of stamps are these? Are these antique stamps or something?
Sometimes they're antique, but what makes them valuable is because many of them are dated 1 and 200 years ago. Okay, so these are stamps that have been taken out of circulations for decades and sometimes even centuries, depending on how old they are. So their value is created over time, like a painting. You know, there's an old saying, paintings never gain value until the painter what?
Dies.
Oh yeah, or the artist dies. All right, stamps, well, nobody has to die, but the older they are, the more valuable they tend to be. Okay. Or if the stamps belong to a celebrity before, then because a certain celebrity, see, not just any old stinky celebrity, like yeah, a certain celebrity, a celebrity, then they, for some reason, rich people attach a certain amount of value because other rich people attach a certain value and all this crazy stuff that rich people do. And I say rich people because poor people don't have the resources or interest in messing with that stuff. Okay. So yeah, that's kind of why stamps, for example, might carry significant values. I don't hear too much about stamp collections these days for some reason. Maybe it's not as popular as it used to be, but certainly those collections that are out there, they're still out there quietly. For obvious reasons, they're not going to discuss them and disclose them and say where they are. Because remember, like cyber thieves online, people are always waiting to take it, steal it. All right. So yeah. So these special assets have a very unique feature, and they are a pain in the butt. But if, as a trustee, you have the facility to go ahead and manage these kinds of trusts, you can make a whole ton of money as long as you're prepared to take the risk to do it. And quite frankly, if you're an established trust company and you have the resources to do it, once you take the necessary precautions, you could do a pretty good job in terms of trust revenue. Because remember, trustees are not in business for their health, are they? No, they're not. Trustees, especially professional trustees, individual trustees don't make a whole lot of money. Sometimes they do it for free. Sometimes they do it for a stinky couple $1,000s a year or something of this nature. If a lawyer is left as trustee to manage a $500,000 life insurance for two children that's still in high school or something, so they get a couple bucks every couple months and pay the school fee and all that stuff, then that lawyer, for example, or that individual trustee will not get a whole bunch of money from that deal. And then, of course, you have the professional trustee who deals in trusts, legacy, and other types of trusts in the millions, and in some cases, billions of dollars. Okay? Like the Bill Gates Trust Foundation. Imagine how many billions are sitting there, and how many billions more will be going there in the future. Absolutely, absolutely. To carry on whatever nonsense Bill Gates and his wife decide they want to do after their death. Not nonsense. Whatever the thing is, things that you know. Have you guys heard the story about Bill Gates and his foundation and his wife?
No.
They're the ones who are sponsoring population control and
Oh
coronavirus
yeah.
stuff. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah, heard about it.
Now, my grandmother used to say, where there's smoke, I'm not accusing them because I've heard hearsay as well. But my grandmother has said, where there's smoke, there's usually
Fire.
true or false.
True.
In my lifetime, it's been true 98% of the time. All right. But I leave that for you youngsters to worry about because you guys are going to be impacted by that nonsense. Well, not nonsense, you know what I mean.
What's the story behind that though? I don't know. I don't get the full sense of it. What's the story
The
behind
story
that?
behind it is that Bill Gates and his foundation, his wife, uh, they have this program where there have been discussions with the rich people around the world, and the discussions centered around how to control the size of the population. That they
Mm-hmm.
wanted to act like they're God to decide who should live and who should cotton picking die. And
Right.
because certain countries are over, quote unquote, in their opinion, overpopulated, they
Populated.
have determined that the world is overpopulated and that they're the ones who have the solution by way of fake viruses, disease, whatever stuff they create,
Immunizations.
yeah, immunizations and all that stuff to control the size of the world's population. That kind of conversation.
Oh wow.
Okay? I agree.
Mm-hmm. So
Yeah,
when they want to
yeah.
come with their COVID
va-
immunization,
Vaccination.
I'm not
Yeah,
taking it.
vaccination.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm happy to hear that because neither am I. And I've told my children, one who lives in New York and one who lives in Canada, of course, they might pull a gun on them and make them do it, but and they may make us do it eventually, but I will
Yeah.
not be volunteering. Because see, after a while, depending on what their real objective is with this flicking vaccination,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying anything's wrong with it, but where there's smoke,
It's fire.
aha. So I am
Mr.
very
Wilkinson, I don't know if I was trying to troubleshoot in my mind, but is there any vaccination that everyone has to take? I know that there's certain vaccinations that are mandatory to get in schools and to do other things like travel to different countries, but there's not one vaccination that I could think about that everyone in the world has to have.
no.
So I,
Yeah.
There
I can
isn't, and it's not. That's a good point. Not only is there one that everybody has to take, but there isn't one that anybody has been mandated to take or else. And they look like they're trying to get to the or else thing for some reason. But no, for example, in each country, like especially developed and developing countries, we have certain vaccination requirements for our babies when they're small. Remember? Like they go and
Mm-hmm.
get the MMB, the Marabella, the whooping cough shot, all this kind of stuff, so they don't quote unquote develop certain diseases later on. Now, that is a requirement, but it is not mandatory.
Right.
You don't have to do it.
Right.
Certainly not in the Commonwealth, certainly not in the Caribbean. It is highly recommended. Most of us do it. Most of our children have benefited from it. We haven't had any major diseases that, like polio and all that stuff, because we take all those shots when our children are babies in their first year.
Right. Right.
Okay, that's the first part, but they're not mandatory. They're just required. Big difference. Then, yes, we have certain shots that we take if we're going to a country where there's malaria or certain diseases potentially that you can pick up. So you try to take an immunization shot so you don't pick up the disease. Some countries make it mandatory for you to take it. Others, it's not mandatory. Generally speaking, the country that you're leaving, like say the Bahamas, will give advices to whether or not it's a danger or not, which is the other good thing about being in a country where they're actually trying to look after their citizens and the well-being of the citizens. So generally, you're right. There are no mandatory vaccinations. They're all voluntary. And of course, if you want to go to a country and they say you have to do it and you don't want to, then don't go to that country.
Yeah.
Simple as that. Okay?
Yeah.
So now it's going to be interesting to see what they're going to do about the corona vaccinations,
Yes.
whether or
Yes.
not they're going to make it mandatory.
Mandatory.
I've heard recently, God forbid, that certain airlines are talking about if you want to fly on their airlines, you have to prove that you've been vaccinated once the vaccinations come into play.
Well,
And
that's
I'm
the
going
end of our freedom
I swear.
yes. See?
because we like to go.
Well, they know we like to go.
Yeah. We
See?
need to go.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they know we need to go.
Mm-hmm.
They know
Yeah.
we have to go. They know
Yeah.
we dream about going. They know that we have family all over the
Yes.
place.
Yes.
They
Yeah.
know, they flicking know.
That's Tropsy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know how many of you guys believe in the Bible, but from what I've read, we're heading into some very Bible stuff again,
Yep.
where you will neither be able to buy nor sell and
Yeah.
take the
Yeah.
mark.
Yes.
So we're slowly, but I'm not
Transitioning.
asking anybody to believe it, but I'm just saying, according to the Bible, we're heading into that phase of things
Yes.
now,
Yes, we are. Yes, we
where
are.
if you don't take the mark, you will not be able to buy
Buy food
and
and
sell.
all.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
now notice everything is going online electronically. So soon you won't be able to use cash anymore.
Right.
And then after a while, you have to get some microchip inside that authorizes you to get access to your bank account. And then if you don't have the mark or the vaccination or whatever the hell they call it, then you won't be able, when you go in the store, the machine will say, not vaccinated, refuse to sell. Then you won't be able to buy
That's very
food.
likely. Very likely.
We're headed there. I'm telling you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so they will force you if you want to eat and feed your
Family.
children.
Your family. But
Family.
the rapture is supposed to happen before all of this. I mean, I ain't trying to make it a religious promise.
No, you don't have to apologize. It is what it is. Who doesn't want to believe? Notice that's the other thing about the Bible. It doesn't tell you you have to believe. It just tells you choose one. And like everything else, like brushing your teeth, you can brush or don't brush.
Free will.
Yes. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So no, yeah. Before the Antichrist comes, there'll be the rapture. But certainly this Antichrist stuff, like buy and sell stuff, that's going to be here before that dude reaches, because that is all designed to make life comfortable for him, so he can do what he has been purported to do, and that is deceive the world. And how will he know? Because everybody's going to be in the system. See that whatever it is, chip card, whatever it flicking is. But certainly before he hits town, there will be a rapture. And then Tom Jones will arrive and reveal himself. That's basically how the story goes. Okay? We all have a choice to believe it
Or not.
or not. I
Yep.
know one thing. I don't know about you guys, but I haven't seen anybody come up with a better situation or solution to the problem than what the Bible says. So they can call me whatever they feel like. I'm going with that one. If there's nothing, fine. I've lost nothing in my opinion. But there is something, dog eat your lunch. See my point?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going with that.
Yeah, I stick into that story.
I don't care who it is, what they have to say, where they came from. I don't give a flying fish. I'm going with that.
Hold
And
on, man.
uh, I made a little melodramatic, huh? Okay. Kermit, sorry. I know I was jumping off the deep end. Yeah, that's how concerned I am about that. Some serious stuff, by the way. Okay. And if you don't believe it, just look around. I saw in the newspaper last week a man and woman were killed on Ida Street in Nassau. Imagine that. Again, what the hell is going on? Nassau? I remember we used to walk around Nassau with our doors open, all kinds of stuff in the windows open, everything. People just walk past and hail, hey. Now people are being murdered in Ida Street. Imagine that. In Nassau. When I was a boy, unheard of. The only person who was murdered when I was a boy was before I was born, so Harry Oaks and people like that. Now we have all this crazy stuff going on. Okay, I wonder what's the reason behind that. Could it have anything to do with what I was just saying? I don't know. Okay. Okay, trust. But does it have anything to do with trust? Yes. Because those of us who are not trustees of that stuff, we are going to be in for some interesting stuff. See my point? That has something to do with trust. In case you were thinking like has nothing to do with trust, it does. Furthermore, we often go around saying in who we trust.
What?
You know, you ever wondered why? Notice the word trust because trustee, the same thing we came from the word trust. Did you know that? That's trustees are supposed to be people we what?
Trust.
That's why we call them trustees. It doesn't know magic. Okay? And so trustees are supposed to be people we trust. So when we leave something in their care,
Is it trust they take care of it?
exactly. So who would you want to be your trustee? God or that dude?
Not the dude.
Say to do
Definitely
it.
God. Not
I'm
the
not
dude.
here. I'm not here to pick for anybody. You choose, because I can't even tell my baby who's 23 what to choose. That's how deep it is, and they're the love of my life. All I can do is say this and that. You choose, and if they choose wrong, as much as that'll be like, oh, my babies, what the hell can I do?
Mm-hmm.
My. Okay, doggone it, Kermit.
I think Kermit has
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Oh,
Oh, there you are, Kermit. Welcome
I was
aboard.
taking a while to get on to my computer and internet.
Yeah, I noticed that you had some blah 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 going on.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we get into the other blah blah blah, let's just go over the answers to the self-assessment questions. Get that out of our hair. First, let's see, unit. Special assets. Did anybody have any major problems, by the way, with the special assets self-assessment? No?
Not like the last one. So we didn't know the last two questions.
Oh, yeah, they were interesting questions. I'm not sure who actually set those questions, especially those two, but it looks like somebody decided, okay, let me see if I can get them out of the box to think about something else, because those two were weird compared to the normal questions. All right, so let's have a look then at the self-assessment questions for Unit 8, special assets and underlying companies. How Define a special asset.
Special
Well,
So it's
assets
on
in a
page
trust.
69. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Shirley.
No, page 69, paragraph 1.
That's the answer? Special case. Oh,
Are assets which require specialized skills in management and have special features that require more non-traditional markets to purchase, sell, trade, or invest.
excellent. I knew what you mean by page 69, but I just wanted you to read it out because sometimes when you read stuff out, things tend to stick a little better than when you just like, well, it's on that page. Something to be said about writing things out and reading them out. They have a way of, strangely, the brain is a funny thing. It just kind of sticks better for some strange reason. Okay, number 2, name some types of special assets.
Artwork,
Jewelry, coins,
That'll be stamps, like you
Stamps.
said, jewelry,
Yes, stamps,
painting,
painting,
artifacts.
artifacts,
antiques,
antiques, special stones, precious stones.
mm-hmm.
Okay, of course, these are not things that we see among regular folk anywhere in the world. Clearly, these are the assets of a certain group of people in the world, and we are not a part of that group. We like to call them the elite group for some reason, because anybody with money, we think that that classifies them to be elite. And if you don't have money, you're not elite. Uh, I'm not exactly sure where that concept came from, but I guess like everything else, like what is ugly and what's not, what's this and what's not, these things evolve by certain people over time. But rest assured, you do not need to be rich to be elite. Okay, for sure. You can be elite with $1,000 in your account. You may not be rich, but you don't need to be rich to have class,
That's right.
quote unquote. That's my point. Okay. All right. What are some of the unique features of special assets? That one wasn't so straightforward, but
No.
yeah, that was like what 11 and 12. You have to go in and like, where the hell is that answer? Some of the special features, special assets, they are illiquid. Remember that word?
Yes,
Right.
liquid assets. Yes.
Yeah, illiquid. What does that mean again?
Not easily converted to cash.
Yeah, not easily converted to cash. Then there also exist in non-traditional markets. Remember that one? What is a non-traditional market?
Like the black market.
derivatives.
That's
What it was? It was
I didn't
derivatives.
think about that one, but that's who said black market?
Me.
Oh,
Nisha.
Anishka?
No, Anisha said it. Anisha said it.
Anisha?
Mhm.
I need to run an investigation on Anisha. I did not even think about black market myself. But when you think about it, it is a non-traditional market, but by every stretch of the imagination. And there are many black markets all over the world of all kinds
Mm-hmm.
still going on everywhere. Okay? Anything you can't find in the normal market, where do you go?
The black one.
Black market.
Of course. And why do they call it black? See? Black. Why didn't they say the white market or the yellow market? The black market. That's why people are always looking at black people funny, like the black market, the black cat, the black.
Mm-hmm.
Need to give us a break. We need to change that crap from black.
Amen.
Yeah, too many negative connotations attached to black. Doggone it. All right, but yeah. So for special assets, non-traditional markets would be like the stock market, the bond markets, CDs, short-term securities, and all that. These are the traditional markets. Illiquid assets are not really negotiated in those markets. They have their own special markets. So if you want to sell a stamp collection, you can't go on the stock market. It's not going to work there, correct?
Right.
If you want to sell a stamp collection or buy one, you need to go to a special auction.
Mm-hmm.
And the special auction will be done by special auctioneers. They're not plentiful either. They are very skilled and highly trained people who make contacts with all the rich folk who have these things. And so whenever you want to buy or sell, you contact the relevant auctioneer or such person or company, and then they will arrange for an auction or sale or purchase. So clearly, these are not non-traditional. Okay? Sorry, these are not traditional. They're very non-traditional. What else? They require what? Specialized skills and
Expertise.
yeah, management, of course. Specialized skills, management, and expertise. You don't find persons, auctioneers for these things everywhere. Persons who conduct valuations. Remember in our discussion on Thursday, these valuation people are scarce, and therefore the cost to hire them is very high. Finding one who's a true valuation person, not a fake, is not always easy either, because some people always pass themselves off like they're the real thing. And in fact, they're not. And if you choose the wrong person, they're going to give you the wrong valuation and dog eat your lunch. And by the time you find out what's going on, they're long gone. Because people are always looking for ways to defraud. Remember that word? Defraud. All right. And then, of course, we know that they have many other unique features that we discussed along the way. So those are some of the special characteristics. Number 4, what are some of the considerations that a trustee must make in accepting to administer a trusted special asset?
Insurance.
Yeah, you have to consider insurance. Okay? Insurance comes under the word protection.
Mhm.
Custody comes under protection as well, but yes, insurance. What else?
The cost of storage.
Location and storage, eh?
Yeah, storage. Like finding the correct place to put them at the correct temperature, with the correct locks, with the correct alarm systems, and so on. Absolutely. Anything else? Of course, sometimes people we have this feature that we say is called custody. Remember that word? So that would be another consideration, custody. A lot of people think storage and custody are the same. Are they?
No, they're
No.
different.
They are different. Okay? Be careful. Storage does not mean the same as custody, because both of them are locked away somewhere in some form or another. Oh, they're the same, but essentially they're not. What's the difference?
Well, you could be custody is like being responsible for it, but you can house it or store it someplace else. Doesn't necessarily mean it's with you or in your hands or in your house. So it can
Correct.
be
Correct.
someplace else.
Correct. You can have custody and storage yourself, or you can have custody and have it stored elsewhere. All right. Or you can have it something stored somewhere without there being any custody requirements. You just store it there. All right. So they are definitely not the same. And then what about marketability? Is that a consideration?
Yes, I guess.
Mhm. It is
Yeah.
a consideration. You have to be able to consider if it's when it's time to buy and sell, if you have the capability and the capacity to do it. So that is another point. The final point is valuations. Remember, we just had that discussion again. Valuations has to do with finding the appropriate persons to conduct the appropriate value so that the assets are recorded at the appropriate value so that you can purchase the appropriate insurance.
Yes.
Lots of little itsy bitsy pieces for this work, but that's okay. If you have the capability as a trustee, you can make tons of money by doing this work. And of course, if you feel a little risky, because there is a certain level of risk involved. What's the answer for number 5? One word. Somebody had more than one word?
Risk.
That was, no, somebody said risk. The ultimate liability for the management of commercial real estate assets in the trust lies with whom? Home.
Trustees.
Yeah, the trustees. The key word there is home. Home suggests what? A person or an entity. So the answer for 5 would be trustee or trustee. Can you have more than one trustee?
Yeah.
What, is
Yeah.
what do the other trustees call if you have more than one?
Co- What you said, Mr. Wilkinson?
Can you have more than one trustee?
Yeah,
What are the other trustees called?
co-trustee.
Indeed, indeed. Just throwing in other stuff while we go,
Mm-hmm.
because these are
When you
always
have more than one trustee, I mean, like who? I mean, at the end of the day, you would when you have more than one person, you always differ sometimes. So I mean, like
of course.
who then outranks who? I mean, like how does that go about? Would
What
have to go
made
to
you?
court?
Well,
Or,
what made you think of that, Cameron?
I mean, I just know human nature. You ain't always agree.
I'm
So
happy
when
you
you
said that. As a matter of fact, I was hoping you say that. As a matter of fact, most of the reasons why trustees are being sued is because of human nature and related issues. That's an excellent and crucial point, which is one of the reasons why people try to avoid co-trusteeships as much as possible. Because wherever there's more than one, there's going to be conflict. That's why husband and wives are always in conflict. That's why people in organizations are always in conflict. People in church are always in conflict. Wherever there's more than one, trust me, it is only a matter of time before there's conflict for one reason or another. So yes, uh, the problem is the reason why we have co-trustees sometimes because beneficiaries themselves or settlers, the persons who establish a trust, they decide that they want it to be more than one trustee for reasons of their own. Like they don't want to give one single trustee ultimate power, or they don't want all the assets to be placed with one trustee for whatever reason. They share the assets between two or three trustees. You follow?
yeah.
So again, despite the potential for conflict, the settlor, just like you, let's say when you get married and have your family and it's time for you to die and everybody's waiting to spend whatever money you have left, you can decide who you want to leave your money with. You might decide to leave one set of assets with a trusted friend because you don't trust certain family members. And then you may decide to leave a certain amount with a trusted family member. Whatever, you see my point?
Right.
So all of a sudden you have co-trustees being involved. But because you have co-trustees, you don't always have conflicts because again, if assets are split and they're not connected, then you have less conflict. Do you follow?
Okay.
Right.
But if the assets are shared, once you have shared, oh my God, then things start to get tricky.
So does I mean so does is there a senior? I understand we co-trustee, but is there such a thing as like a senior trustee over the two or
There could be.
okay?
Again, remember, it depends on how the settlor establishes the trust. The trustee does not decide what they want their status to be. The settlor decides it based on how the trust is established. So let's say the settlor has $10 million to settle. And if they leave 8 million with trustee number one and 2 million with trustee number two, who do you think the senior trustee is?
Not even fair away. I mean, I guess the one with the more money, but
See, you already creating conflict by saying but. And you're right. Theoretically, the one with the majority of assets will control the trust. Just like a company. If you have a company and you own 60% of the shares and somebody or some other group owns 40%, who controls the company?
60%. Oh no.
Yes, but that doesn't mean the other 40% won't make noise and be in conflict and call you a dog and trying to run the company down, you stink, and then they try to get rid of you. You
Not
follow?
like government.
Kim still has a dilemma with that stuff.
no, yeah. I understand. Mhm.
I know you do. Just want you to confirm. So it's the same principle with the co-trustees. You follow?
Okay.
So yeah, there could be seniority. There will be conflict as long as it's more than one. All right. So you're single, right, Kermit?
If I'm single,
I mean, you're not married.
well, no, I'm not married.
See,
No.
but you see, he couldn't answer that
He had to
question.
think for
It's
that.
either yes or no, right? And he
No,
couldn't
he
answer the
said,
question.
He
That's
stutter.
he stutter.
Yeah.
That's how these men
No.
He
That's how they
stutter.
go.
Kermit
That's how they
stutter.
go.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't
He had to take inventory and who listening, you see?
Yeah.
That's
Is
what he
it
that's
This
what
is
he do.
recorded. Y'all remember this? It's recorded, so we have to be careful how we
You
answer.
better you better clear that up.
Isn't
How
it
they go, man.
interesting? The guy who raised the question of conflict with co-trustees has become the center of conflict by not answering that question directly. Okay, let me help you along, Kermit. You're not married yet, right?
No, no.
Okay, great. So you don't have to like get, you're not married yet, but you'll find out one day when you get married, you will take on a co-trustee, wouldn't you?
Yeah, that is true.
What that co-trustee will be called your wife,
Yeah.
and I'll be damned if you will not be in conflict with that co-trustee.
One week.
Oh, no answer from Kermit. I guess he's.
No, I agree. I agree. No, I agree. I agree.
I know. I just want you to say I agree, so you could remember when that time comes. You know what, Mr. Wilkins, Suzette, this is the same thing Mr. Wilkinson told me 5 years ago when I did that class, that I was going to be in conflict with a co-trustee, and you're it. Doggone it. Yeah. So there you go. That hopefully answers your question about the co-trustee. All right. Of course, if you don't want conflict, Kermit, you can just remain a single trustee. How's that? No answer, because he doesn't want to remain a single trustee either.
Sorry, Mr. Wilkins. I didn't know you just now.
I said you don't have to have any problems with co-trustee issues. You could remain a single trustee.
No, no, no. I ain't trying to be like that, Fabo.
Okay, okay. Way to go.
Funny energy.
I love it. Why the hell should you be comfortable and the rest of us are suffering? I'm just kidding. Don't, let me see my wife. She would be most hurt if she didn't. Okay, number 6. What are some of the challenges of managing commercial real estate? Anybody do that one? As an asset of the trust. What are some of the challenges?
That's the imposition of certain taxes, levies, rates, assessment, and licensing fees.
Oh yeah, lots of taxes and rates and fees you have to pay. You have to monitor. You have to make sure that the taxes don't fall behind, that the taxes are appropriate for the jurisdiction and all that kind of stuff, so that the asset will not be overtaxed or undertaxed. Because if you're overtaxed and you're paying too much, so that's extra money coming out of the trust fund. If you're undertaxed and you're not paying enough, somebody's coming after you to pay the rest along with interest and all that stuff. So those are very important issues. And remember, depending on the value of the commercial property, a mall, for example, on it, or major apartment complex or whatever the commercial property is, they could be worth many, 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 many millions of dollars and attract significant taxes. Okay. Anything else? Commercial property management. You have to repair it, insure it, maintain it, add new construction, and so on. So it's one of those special assets, by the way, that you just don't not think about. You have to be checking on those things, like you have to be checking on everything as a trustee. As a matter of fact, a major part of being a trustee is not only putting things in place, but always checking it. Because remember, at the end of the day, no matter who the hell is doing what, who's still liable?
The trustee.
The trustee.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The trustee. All right. So I remember when my kids were little and all this stuff came up and people tried to tell me stuff. I'm like, I hear you. And I understand what your thoughts are, what your suggestions are, and what your recommendations are, and I accept them, whatever they might be. However, at the end of the day, I must do this, because at the end of the day, who's going to be liable for that family? Mr. Wilkinson. They're not going to call my children's name. No, they're not even going to call my wife's name. In fact, even if my wife does something, they'll say Mr. Wilkinson's wife. I wasn't even there, but they'll still say Mr. Wilkinson's wife, because I'm seen as the what? Flicking trustee of the family. See my point? Kermit? No answer. Kermit?
Yes, sir.
Actually, I'm talking to you. I'm not even talking to these chicks. Not chicks.
These
Ladies.
chicks.
I know you're not chicks anymore. You're all grown up. But
Chicken thing.
yeah, your hands
Chicken-
now. Come on.
Hands. I know you was gonna say heads.
Sorry. Some, some chickens and then some hens. So yeah, we have chicks, chickens, and hens. It's funny you guys know what all those things mean. That's good. Kermit, for you, um,
I don't want time to play with you.
whenever you become a trustee with the co-trustee, even though she's a co-trustee, you're going to be considered the head trustee of the house. And so you're going to have to take on certain responsibilities no matter what and make those decisions accordingly. Look, it's a funny thing, especially under the old traditions, and some people still recognize the old traditions. If your children do anything, they don't call the children's name because they're children. They say Mr. Wilkinson's children or Mr. Ferguson. If my wife does something, even though I was not there, she did it on her own. Not my fault. They're not even going to call her name. They're not going to say Melanie. They're going to say, and then they're not going to call her maiden name either, nor her first name. They're going to say, Mr. Wilkinson's wife did it. She teeth it. That's how it works. That's how serious trusteeship issues are. Okie dokie. All right. Number 7. How are some special assets held in trust? Anybody? I know that one wasn't pretty straightforward either.
No, it wasn't
No,
straightforward.
it was not. How are some special assets held in a trust? Anybody ventured into trying to answer it? No? Well, basically what that question was saying is, how do they actually get into the trust as special assets? And basically they're transferred into the trust by whom?
The settlor.
The settlor, or there was a secondary issue. Anybody see that? Transferred in by the settlor or donated to the trust. Do you remember that? And then, of course, what about the management of underlying companies? How do they get into the trust? They are also transferred by the settlor as a company, usually a what? IBC, remember? For the trustee to manage. Okay? So that wasn't particularly straightforward. Number 8 was better. What is the Bartlett Clause? The Bartlett Clause, anyone?
Well, the Bartlett case outlined the prudent amount of business rules. That's what you mean?
That's indeed what I mean.
Okay, good.
So what is the Bartlett Clause? She said good, and she said, that sounds good, but I'm not sure if the rest of it is what it is. Yeah. Let it rip, read the whole thing. What is the Bartlett Clause? Take it straight from the text. That's what I want you to do.
Someone want to read that for me?
Yeah, somebody read that for her.
Please, thank you.
Anishka, tell them what page it's on. That might help. I'll tell you what page it's on.
72.
72 in the middle. So somebody go ahead and read that for Anishka. The Bartlett Clause.
The Bartlett case outlined the prudent man of business rule and requires the professional trustee as shareholder to monitor and intervene in the affairs of a company which the trustee has a shareholding interest, particularly a majority shareholding, as in the case of Bartlett versus Barclays Bank Trust Company Limited.
Thank you very much. And for those of you who don't have any sense of curiosity, which you should have, you should go back. The chapter talked a little bit about the Bartlett case. Some Justices Cross and Whiteland and all these people had quite a bit to say about the Bartlett case. And since all of that was said about the Bartlett case, you should really I'll be curious about the Bartlett case, because the Bartlett case seems like a case that could come up. You guys are going to be tested, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And with all this discussion on the Bartlett case, that is likely a case that will come up. So you need to want to know the basic characteristics of the Bartlett case and the results of the Bartlett clause, and the results basically what the Chief Justices had to say. And basically, I'm going to let something fly out of my mouth, but that's no substitute for you to go back and read the tenets of the case. Students. Do you know why you call students at the moment? Because you have to go and suffer through stuff that you hate doing.
Mm-hmm.
That's the life of a student. How do I know? Because I was a student once too, suffering through stuff that I hated doing, especially as a working student. Stank. But the tenets of the Barclays case, this. The trustee was given an underlying company to act as trustee and manage. The trustee did not take all the relevant information that it got, and the information that it got about the company was not sufficient. Nor did the trustee act on certain information that suggested that the company was about to make some decisions that would harm the company. As trustee, the trustee was supposed to raise certain questions and take certain actions and take its position as head of the company in terms of the majority shareholder to stop the actions that the directors were going to take that would hurt the company. The trustee failed to take that action. The company lost money, significant amounts of money. Beneficiaries of the company sued, and the courts ruled against the trustee and said, according to Justice Cross and Whitman, that the trustee ought to have gotten more information about what was going on in the company. And when they got information that things were going the other way, they should have acted upon the information and shut down the incorrect decision. Thus, the company would not have lost. And so the trustee was found guilty and had to pay whatever the courts directed. That is a summary of the Bartlett case. All right. That's why the Bartlett case clause is all about trustee monitoring underlying companies, because in that case, the trustee was deemed to be negligent by the courts in its responsibility to oversee the proper management of the company. All right. Good luck with your review of the Bartlett case. I encourage you to be familiar with it, because you never know. Crap like that tends to come up. Yeah, tends to come up on exams. All right, number 9. What is international business company? What is that?
They have special features which allows the trustees to minimize their risk, expense, operation, and management.
Thank you, Anishka. If anybody disagrees, speak now or speak later. Yes, absolutely. That is exactly right. Okay. And then finally, number 10, what are some of the benefits of an IBC as an underlying company for a trust? Some of the benefits are?
Would that be the part where they say have no capital gains, corporate or other taxes, and the cost of incorporation and administration is relatively inexpensive?
That is the part.
Okay.
Can anybody add anything else to that part? Like tax exemptions and confidentiality, those are also a part of it. Anonymity is a part of it.
Ease of operation.
Ease of operations is a part of it. Okay, so those are all the characteristics of an IBC and why trustees would have the underlying company set up as an IBC. All right. Any questions on those? Okay, wonderful. Let's go over into the answers for forced airship then.
You ain't going over the chapter yet and you want to go straight to the answers?
Who said that?
I did.
Anishka?
Yes.
Oh, well, going over the chapter would help answer the questions at this stage?
Yes, I didn't know we had to answer that though.
Oh, were you with us on Thursday?
I thought it was just unit 8 because I know we were doing unit 9 today.
Okay. Well, let's check with the other directors of the company. Did everybody else get that notion?
No, you said to do 8 and 9.
Okay.
Anishka.
Oh.
Where
I
was
missed that.
Anishka?
Yeah.
It's,
It is.
it's okay.
The
Kermit?
better question is, did we do it?
Aha. Did anybody do it? Uh, no. Kermit, did you do it? Kermit has this thing on mute. He's having coffee already. Are you there, Kermit? It's funny. It's just like in primary school. You always have to check to see where the guys are because they always wandering off somewhere. The girls are sitting listening, guys wandering off somewhere, getting into mischief. All right, so we'll do the self-assessment after the lecture then. Make sure I don't forget. Okay?
Okay.
I can make sure we have those responses. All right, so if there are no questions at the moment, I would like to go to my video on called Cabin Trust. And Cabin Trust has to do with the discussion about a special asset and special assets issues that we didn't really get an opportunity to see on Thursday. But again, we know that special assets are a very significant part of the trustee's job, and only the bold and the beautiful and the risky trustees. By the way, anybody in this group watch the bold and the beautiful?
Like
That's
long
good.
time
A
ago.
long time ago, the Forrester family, but that was years ago.
Yeah.
You guys are watching the old version. They have
Must
a
be
mo-
decade.
They have a new
or-
one?
yeah, they have a current one that's on now with the children of the
Listen.
Foresters doing nonsense.
Oh no, I'm not gonna watch that.
Me either. I just walk past, listen to music because I used to watch that when my hair was black. No, watch it. Hell no. I knew it was on. Okay, but for some reason, like
That's not like you used to watch that.
no, hell no. I can't mess with that. It's too predictable. Uh, I like to watch things that are not always predictable, even though it's too predictable. Uh, so Susan, when are you going to be here? I'm not sure. I'm waiting for Ross. Well, where's Ross? Well, Ross is at the office. He should be here soon. Why is Ross coming? I'm not sure. He said he had something to discuss about Marianne. What is it about man? Like all day, every day is the same thing.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
but what happens? Let me see on my wife.
Wait for long, and then when the person reach it, we're over. You gotta watch the next
Yeah, and then
episode.
tomorrow they start the same
You-
nonsense. So Marianne, you just arrived. Yes, I got delayed at the mall. I saw my mother-in-law.
Yes,
She was upset about
yes.
her father-in-law, who was upset about her sister-in-law, who was upset with his brother-in-law. And I'm like, man,
Why
give
are
us
you here? That's all I want to know. Why are you here?
yes. But my wife watches. I mean, she watches that stuff like every day. And when that's on and I'm talking to her, she doesn't hear anything I say. And I'm like, how could my poor wife be watching that and so tied up? Like she's a little girl again listening to that thing. Says, my story's coming on. I'm like, story? Okay.
Uh,
So Kermit, who the hell is Kermit?
I'm here.
Oh, so see what happens. That's a co-trustee issue. When I say to my co-trustee, like, why are you watching that crazy stuff? She said, this is not crazy. And if I insist that it's crazy and unfruitful, unnecessary, and she get upset as a co-trustee, and then I have to understand, like, I can't get too upset as a co-trustee because when co-trustees get upset, then they try to make everybody else around them upset. But maybe you don't know anything about that yet, Kermit, but you will find out.
Yeah.
That isn't designed to scare you. That's designed to encourage you. Do it. Don't let that spook you. Because until you've been married and dealt with stuff like that, you haven't done anything substantive in life.
Mhm.
That's just encouragement to get married, Kermit. All right.
Okay.
So let's see what our discussion is on the cabin. The cabin talks about special assets. I'm just trying to see this bloody thing. So I pressed the right thing. Where's the cabin thing? There we go. Share cabin. Can you guys see that? Can you see that?
Yes, yes.
Great.
Cabin trust, general.
Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So this is our little thing about the cabin trust. Because it's about 30 minutes long. I'm not sure I'm gonna let you see the whole thing, but at some point, I want you to get the gist of the nature of special assets. That's really the point. Just to see how complicated in some instances they could be in practice. And these are practicing attorneys from somewhere in the United States. And I like that jurisdiction because, like the UK, even though they have some differences, a lot of the stuff are the same based on common law practices as it is in the UK and other Commonwealth countries. Okay? Did you know that the United States was once a Commonwealth country, folks?
No.
Yeah. Well, not in the sense of direct colonization, but remember, the first, other than the Indians, the first settlers in the United States were from Britain. Okay? And they were escaping the British government because they wanted to get rid of taxes, the high taxes that the British government were charging the people at the time, and they wanted better representation in terms of the politics and religious freedoms and so on. So that's why religious freedom is a big deal in the United States at the moment, because George and company, I mean George Washington, that is, they ran away from Britain. They were British. They were British. They ran away from Britain, went to the United States, colonized the United States. That's why they were fighting with the Indians, because the Indians were like, "Who the hell are you?" And the Brits were like, "Who are you, savage people?" And so on. But the original colonists, other than the Indians, were the Brits. Okay, and so a lot of the American systems are based on British systems because the British are the ones who built the original country. And that's why a lot of the things that they do in the United States, especially back in the day, are very British. But over time, the Americans wanted to be disassociated with their British roots. And so they came up with their own republic, their own this, their own that, and their own way of doing things, even though the foundations are still fundamentally British. They don't want you to tell them that. They don't want to be reminded. All right? So just a little history lesson. All right, here we go, cabin.
So what do you do if you have a cabin in the family that's been owned by grandparents or great-grandparents? How do you pass it down to generation and keep it in the family? And what are the legal repercussions of doing it? What's the best way to manage it, and what issues can come up?
Yeah, so we're going to discuss that. So that's something that came up this week with the client. It's come up before, and strangely enough, I heard back from some of the people that I helped with this situation like this a year ago, and they're still dealing with it. So, but it's a great topic to talk about today. So, what do you do with the cabin, with one of those, with the unique property? You have, family that's made memories there, so it's a special place. Yesterday I felt kind of bad. I was saying, how I get it, how important it is and how special it is. But I was like, at the end, I was like, can you just liquidate it? It's really just easiest if we can sell it and liquidate cash. Money's a lot easier to split up than property. And with a property like a cabin, a lot of issues come in, like, so who gets to use it, when do they use it, who pays for what happens when something breaks, you get all of those issues. And some of what we're seeing, I think there's a lot of families that have properties like this, and they've been able to share. They've been able to play along nicely for sometimes a lot of generations. Like the one yesterday, they had it split up this way since 1994. So it was a lady where I believe it was her grandfather, correct? Was it her grandfather that gave the properties?
He built the property, so that's something too. It's fundamental, it's something that your great-grandparents or grandparents built. So that's why they want to hold on to it and
he built it, and he said that he wants all of his heirs to be able to use it, right? It was that the situation.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking, oh my gosh, what a mess, you know, like legal wise. And right now there's over 200 beneficiaries because they're down into there's a bunch of kids and then grandkids.
Folks, did you hear that? At the moment, there are 200 beneficiaries who have the right to use that property. Did you hear that?
Yes, I heard it.
Did anybody else hear it?
I can barely hear it.
Okay, let me see if I can.
I heard it. I heard it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, who can barely hear it?
I can barely hear it, but I don't know if that has to do with the noise because I'm on the road. So I'll just listen again.
Oh, you're on the road. Doggone it.
Yeah, I didn't want to miss class, so
So you are multitasking.
no, I'm not driving. I'm not driving, so I'm able
Okay.
to follow in the book.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful.
I didn't want to miss class.
You know what? Kudos to you. Let me see, buddy. Was that? That's Shadell.
Yes.
Okay, way to go, Shadell. No, I appreciate that and I respect that effort. The reason why I said that, because a lot of people just say, you know what? To hell with it. The devil with that flicking class. Or whatever. Okay, so kudos to you, Shadell. Okay? So hang in there, whatever you can hear, whatever. Way to go. I love it.
So, and that trust ran out of money is what it sounds like. We haven't actually seen that trust, but the way we were contacted is that situation is ending. So the property now needs to be distributed to, I believe there was 5 or 6 kids, and one of them has passed away that has a couple kids. So they're trying to figure out, what do they do? How do they collect this property? And I don't know if I gave any answers the other day, Anna. Did I? It seems like I just kind of told them all the bad things that could happen, right? So
The usual, it depends.
yeah, but what do we talk about? And then Will, so with your background being from Iowa, farms is the issue. It's a very similar thing with farms. We have a lot of clients who
Yeah, because it's real estate, and real estate is hard to, one, jointly own, and two, hard to pass down. And a lot of times people don't want it to get sold. So that's what raises a lot of issues, is how do you pass it down if you don't want to let your heirs sell it? You know, it's a lot easier to distribute cash than it is real estate.
Yeah. One of the challenges sometimes, I think people have, like going back to this guy that built the cabin, he wanted all of his heirs to be able to use it. So I'm sure that was his motivation as he's building this thing. You know, as he's putting it together.
I just want you guys to know that this information is not just to enlighten you for your academic pursuits at the moment, but if you're really keen, you will note, if you haven't noted already, that a lot of this stuff can actually be used by you in your own personal lives. Agree?
Yeah.
So it's not just academics to pass an exam. Some very important information is sitting in and around these chapters, these discussions and these videos that can be very helpful long after you pass your examination and even doing the work that you do from day to day that may or may not involve some of this stuff. A lot of it is very relevant to your personal lives. Like when my parents die, are they going to leave me something in their will? If they're going to leave it, what will it be? When I die, will I leave something in my will for my children or not? If I am, what will it be? Who will get the land? Who will get money? Who will get nothing? Who will I leave generation property to so that everybody can share it and nobody can sell it? That's what these things are all about. And this is what makes in this discussion special assets are part of the issue here. Because oftentimes we have things like cabins and farmlands and other unique types of assets, generational property kind of inheritances that make them special assets. And they are not always easy issues to resolve. Okay?
Struggling, where he's like, this will be a great thing for my posterity, for all of my family and future generations. So, his wife and his children, they saw that struggle and they want to preserve it. And then they come to see someone like us and they say, what do? We have a trust. There's over 200 beneficiaries. And I'm going, oh my gosh, this seems like a nightmare. Any one of those beneficiaries could cause a problem. What are they entitled to? So where I was going earlier, I think part of this, the older generation, maybe they're better, without contracts, doing things with a handshake, kind of trusting each other and working it out. But some of the concerns is with the younger generation. And as you just add more and more beneficiaries in there, there's more chances that something isn't going to be spelled out with certainty in the contracts or in the arena or in the agreements. So, like one of the examples I brought up is, are people allowed to Airbnb it? What are people's rights in the property? They can come stay there. Can they bring their wife? How about their girlfriend? How about, where do you draw the line? So, and then with all of those beneficiaries, if any one of them feels like they were wronged, then you have the potential for liability. So, so what do you do? What can we do, Anna? What should a family do with if they have a property, with a farm or a cabin?
Probably their best bet would be to create a trust and put the property into a trust.
Yeah, so a trust helps it avoid probate. That'll transfer the ownership. So we want to make sure we transfer the ownership. And then the next thing is who's going to be the owners. So some of the challenges right now is where people are wanting multiple owners, I guess, where they want several people to own a property. So I guess that's one of the first questions that maybe needs a little bit more thought is, who should maintain ownership of this property? And that depends on the rights that you want to give the beneficiaries to it.
Yeah, and there becomes problems with joint ownership because typically with joint ownership, one may want to sell and the other may not. And so that can raise problems, especially if the one that wants to keep it doesn't have money to buy out the other one. One of my clients recently decided to just give it to one of their children. So one child owns it, and that way, and then they gave them sort of non-binding instructions to let the whole family use it during their life. So they tried to avoid that problem with joint ownership that way.
Yeah, so that works for the one kid that got it. He's got the property. Yeah. And he said, oh, don't worry, mom and dad, I'll share. Like, oh, it's not like I need the money. Is that they always say. It's not like I want it. It's not like I'm not going to do this for my siblings. Yeah. And then mom and dad pass away. A lot of times that story changes.
Yes, mom and dad passes away, and that one child who said they'll share with the other ones, suddenly they are not interested in sharing anymore. Does that sound familiar to anyone?
Yep.
Welcome to the world of trusteeship. It's a very common problem, and I can guarantee that some of you will encounter it before you die, in one form or another. Okay?
No, this is my property. Where were you? Where were you when mom was in the hospital? This is my thing.
That's one of the definite problems that can arise. Yeah.
So I think one of the things that it comes down to is setting realistic expectations. I feel like as lawyers, like a lot of times we're crushing dreams. It's like people have these grand ideas, but it's we tell them how it's going to work in reality, and we're trying to avoid potential litigation. So one of the suggestions I would say is if we can limit the number of beneficiaries. So, like yours, I don't know if I like giving it just to one kid, like share with the others, but how about what if you give it to the kids and not involve their children, the grandkids? You know, that's the way to limit the total amount of beneficiaries. But again, you know, what happens when the kids pass away though? What rights do the grandkids have? So let's see, let me pull up my screen. Let me get my screen on here and we'll look at this chart a little bit. There we go. So this is the presentation that we use in our meetings for clients. This is showing a continuation trust. There's a house, a bank account, some life insurance, and then here's an LLC. So, and this is a cabin. So this, if you zoom in here, this tiny little house, pretend that's a cabin. So if someone has a cabin and they want it to be preserved for generations, what they can do, so big picture, we want the cabin, grab the right thing. It is. We want the cabin into the trust so that it avoids probate. We want a way to transfer it. But if they want to get more instruction.
Does everybody know what the word probate means? You don't want to graduate from your trust class without knowing what the word probate means. What does it mean?
That's where you would apply to the court to be verified as the administrator of a will or the executor of an estate. I think that's
indeed. Whoever the executor is in a will, that person will apply to the courts to probate or to clear the will according to the instructions of the testator who made the will. And that executor will administer and guide with the court's direction how the assets of the will are to be disbursed to whomever the beneficiaries are. Probate can take anywhere from 3 months to a year to many years, depending on the nature of the will, the assets involved, and the beneficiaries who are affected. So if you're planning to write a will for whomever, you guys, make sure the will says clearly who gets what. Clearly. Don't leave any doubt, because if you leave doubt, that's going to extend the probate period potentially indefinitely. Okay? Just a little sidekick as part of your trust session, because it is part of the trust. Remember, in a will, the executor is like the trustee, because they're responsible for having the will probated or administered to the courts. So until such time as the courts are done in their direction of how the will is to be managed and handled, who gets what, the executor will act as trustee of that particular will. Okay.
Like who can use the property and when and who's going to pay for things. Then an LLC, limited liability company. Technical difficulties. It always works so good when I practiced this before. We're not live, we're not recording. It's like no problem.
The pressure, I think.
Oh man.
Yeah, because an LLC lets you do an operating agreement, and so you can work out a lot of these issues ahead of time. But it takes a lot of thought into how you want to manage and govern.
Yeah. So the way the continuation of trust would work, upon the first death, you know, that everything stays in there for the surviving spouse, and then when the second person passes away, so when mom and dad pass away, then the LLC gets distributed to the beneficiaries. And the LLC can determine how to use the property. so we can determine, yeah, how you book it, all of that information. Now, so Anna recently had a client, maybe it was a few weeks ago, where they're trying to preserve this property, and that's kind of, they had a situation like we explained. The cabin's already been in the family, built by grandpa, and they're trying to figure out what to do next. And I've seen several people with this issue. I had clients about a year ago. I was helping mom design her estate plan, and very similar situation. She has a cabin built by her husband, and they want to keep it in the family. And so the plan that we came up with is I helped them create a trust, and I said, go see another attorney to do this LLC, draft the custom operating agreement that will go over how the property can get used. And so that's what they did. And I know just creating this LLC was a struggle. It kind of, it's almost like a fast forwarded the fight, like they're having the struggle right now instead of all passed away. We have the one sister saying, no, I'm going to sue you to her brother if it's not set up this way. And what this person wanted is they wanted, very similar, they wanted the cabin to be owned equally by all their heirs. So the wishes that the dad wanted is that his kids would be equal owners, and then once a grandchild is an owner, they would also be equal owners with the kids. Again, that sounds great in theory, right? Just that'd be nice. If I had a beautiful place, I would love to keep in the family like that. But just I don't know how you do it, and that's the challenge of if you want to have 3 owners initially, and then say that new members of the class, grandchildren, are also owners, or they have rights in this.
Welcome to the world of special assets. If you don't see yet how complicated it is and will become and can become, then you are completely blind to this stuff at the moment, because it is very complicated. And going back to what Carmen said earlier, once you have more than one of anything, notice it starts getting complicated, especially after mom and dad pass away, the original settlers, and the kids kick in with their own personal agendas, and the grandchildren kick in with their own personal agendas. And all of a sudden, it goes from a normal situation that mom and dad set up 50 years ago, whatever, to total madness. Welcome to the world of special assets. And if you are a trustee,
so that's part of the challenge. It could be possible to do things. So instead of having the LLC do the operating agreement, we could draft a custom trust for the cabin, where the trust would control, where the ownership would stay inside of the trust, and then it would say who has use of that property. But again, to do this, you're just talking time, which can be expensive. And like I was telling the lady the other day, it's like, I don't really want to get into this, but the challenge intrigues me. The fact that there's an issue, they're going to receive this property. What should they do with it? So how do we leave it with them, Anna? Do you want to say how what we're going to do with them, the option we gave?
To meet with all of the beneficiaries of the cabin and figure out what exactly their goals are in the future for this cabin. Who are the beneficiaries going to be? Are their children going to be beneficiaries after they start passing away? So what they want to do with the cabin, and then figure out from there what the best approach would be for them.
Yeah, so that's number one. We got to get all the parties together, get all the beneficiaries, and see what their expectations.
okay. Okay, are you guys still there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you have a pretty good idea of what the problems are there. Okay, I would like to think so. You can see right away what kinds of issues and concerns can come up with special trusts, and it can be a complete nightmare. All right. So now, having said that, we can get into our discussion about forced airships and see what kinds of problems exist there, because it's a whole unique set of problems under forced airships. Have anybody ever heard about forced airships ever before? No? No?
May have, but didn't know what it was at the
Yeah,
time.
probably not. And part of the reason for that is forced airships are not even part of the discussion in this jurisdiction or any jurisdiction in this part of the world. We do not exercise forced airships in the Bahamas, in the Caribbean, or anywhere else offshore in this jurisdiction at all. Cayman, BVI, Guernsey, none of those places. These things are done in other countries of the world, like Spain and Italy, and certain places in South America, certain countries where the actual government decides how your assets are going to be distributed, not you. That's why we call it forced. You don't get to decide who gets what. The government will decide, depending on the country you live in or you were born in, who gets what. So, for example, if you have assets and you want to leave all to your children and none to your wife, or vice versa, in many forced airship countries, they will not allow you to do it. They have laws that they pass through the parliament that says your wife will get 50% of whatever you own, and the rest will be divided equally between your children, or some other version. The point is, doesn't matter how you feel or whether they deserve it. And that's the problem with forced airships. And that's why many settlers from those countries come to the Bahamas to establish their trusts here or any other jurisdiction in this part of the world, because they're trying to escape those forced airship rules. Okay? So that's the background to forced airships. So let's see what our discussion is going to be about. I think we ended with Kermit the last time. Let's see. Who's going to be my first victim today? Siobhan, are you there?
I don't see you on the call.
It wasn't Siobhan here earlier.
Yes, she was.
She rushed off to the mall to pick up some Christmas lights. Okay. Shadell, are you able to read? No, Shadell was on the road. So that only leaves at the moment Kermit, Anishka, and Anisha.
I'll start.
Okay,
I'll start.
okay, Anishka, why don't you pick up then with forced airship learning objectives, and then move us into the discussion.
Okay. Forced airship. Forced airship laws are prevalent in civil law jurisdictions, France, Spain, and Italy, and Islamic countries, Saudi Arabia. In these jurisdictions, it is the view that a deceased is required to make adequate provisions for their dependents. A person who is domiciled in a forced heirship regime cannot dispose of his property in a trust or a will as he or she wishes without consideration of the other spouses and children's interest in the property. The individual is mandated by law to dispose of his property and wealth after his lifetime in accordance with forced heirship legislation. There is no recognition of total freedom of testation. Due to the restrictions imposed by such laws, many wealthy persons seek to make arrangements offshore from their jurisdictions to enable them to dispose of property as they wish, notwithstanding the existence of forced heirship laws in their country. Oftentimes, countries with forced heirship laws would attempt to impose such laws on the worldwide assets of their citizens. However, the Bahamas has enacted laws to allow foreign persons to create legitimate Bahamian trusts in order to assist such persons in planning their wealth as they wish. Significant powers are reserved to the settler under Section 3 of the Trustee Act 1998 as amended to allow greater flexibility in creating trusts which meet the wealth planning needs and financial goals of foreign settlers. Under Section 3, settlers may wish to reserve significant powers to themselves in the administration and management of the trust while still ensuring that the legal validity of the trust can withstand an attack from beneficiaries in foreign jurisdictions who may wish to invalidate the trust due to the forced heirship laws in their country. Additionally, the restrictions of Section 83 of the Trustee Act 1998 with regard to information that beneficiaries may exercise their rights over are another important resource in combating attacks from foreign beneficiaries who are intent on challenging the legal validity of Bahamian trusts created and funded by foreign settlers. The fixed inheritance rights which exist under forced heirship laws supersede the testamentary and other dispositions of the settler, which may be made under a will, particularly if such provisions are contrary to forced heirship laws. Forced heirship laws, through their worldwide prohibition of the disposition of a foreigner settler's property, may also assist creditors of the deceased settler to receive payment of their debts before the final distribution or probate of the property. In considering the disposition of assets under forced heirship and inheritance law, one must also consider the fact that certain estates and/or inheritance taxes may be levied on the estate of the deceased settler or on the inheritance of the beneficiaries. A tax levied on the estate of a deceased person is called an estate tax. The estate tax may be a percentage of the value of the total assets of the deceased person. It allows only the estate of the deceased person to be taxed, while inheritance of the beneficiaries are free of taxes. Conversely, a tax which is imposed on the heirs of or beneficiaries of a deceased person's estate is known as an inheritance tax. Inheritance tax is levied on the gifts or bequests granted to the beneficiaries under a will or under the inheritance laws and must be paid upon their receipt of the same. In most jurisdictions, an estate or an inheritance tax may be levied, but not both, which will make it inequitable to double tax the estate of deceased person and the heirs of his estates.
Thank you.
Another
Nisha.
consideration.
Thank you, Nisha.
Okay.
A mouthful already.
You're
If you have
welcome.
any idea what you just read, you'll be like, damn, I didn't realize all of that crap was involved. But I can tell you, if I'm sure you do, a whole lot of stuff is going on. If we back up to your original discussion on the first page, I'm sure we recognize now, first of all, how devastating forced airships can be, especially for persons who live in those countries like which? What countries are they?
Like France, Spain,
Spain,
Saudi,
Italy.
Islamic
Yeah,
countries.
yeah, those European countries, right? So typically you find those kinds of things in European countries, South American countries, maybe certain African countries, not India, because India is a Commonwealth country, so they're under common law like we are, in case you didn't know. God knows what the hell happens in China. They only let you know what they want you to know, because they're a bunch of sneaky little, this is recorded, can't say it. They don't know what the hell's going on over there. You don't even have the right to own property in China. Did you know that?
Didn't know that.
Oh, you didn't know. So when you're driving around, so I want to buy a piece of property, and then you go in and find a real estate broker and you buy property. The typical Chinese person cannot own property because everything in China is they have to agree to give it to you or allow you to have it, but you can't own private property and say that's mine because the state owns everything. technically.
Mhm.
Okay. So all these banks and other stuff that's building hotels in the Bahamas and the Caribbean, Bahama State Bank of China, not independent banks. State Bank of China, which means the Chinese government controls it.
Mm.
And you'll be surprised to know that those buildings that they build in countries like ours called Bahama and the Hilton and all that new stuff they're building on the curve there, that monstrosity, they're not just doing it to make money.
What's
They
another
doing it to
reason?
own our landing.
Oh,
Second reason, because once people start owning land, can you get them out?
Nope.
no.
Oh, okay. Just telling you youngsters stuff for the future. In
Mm.
case you think it's just that like there's such sweet people and they love us Negro. Oh, sorry,
Mm.
can't. This is recorded. Since you think there's such sweet people and it's all about just profits, it's not. Okay. And the only way to be able to think about it, the only way to be able to think about it is to be educated about it. And that's a big
Mhm.
part of the problem. A lot of people are not educated about these things. They have
Mm.
no idea what's going on. And
Mm-mm.
those who are educated about them are running their own little private programs to the detriment of everybody because everybody's just busy filling their.
Pockets.
Need I say more about that one? All right. So you can see the problem with forced airships and why settlers would come into jurisdictions like ours to set up trusts in the Bahamas and elsewhere in this jurisdiction because they don't want their beneficiaries to be subject to the forced airship laws of their particular countries. Okay? Of course, um, as a result of this, there'll always be some potential for conflict because a country might discover that uh, certain trusts are set up with assets that the particular home country might want to take possession of. But if you do it in the Bahamas or the BVI or Cayman, for example, they don't have access to those assets because everything is now governed by Bahamian or whatever the jurisdiction is. And so those foreign countries are not happy when their people go into other countries and set up trusts to protect their assets against forced airship rules. But you can see already why it might be the thing that they want to do. People don't want the government to tell them to do with what they earned. Would you?
Nope.
No. The problem is if you live in a country where the government starts to control everything, then sooner or later you won't have any choice. Which is what Trump was trying to tell people about the Democrats and Biden and the rest of them. They want to establish a government controlled country, which is what we call a socialist country, so that people become dependent on the government for almost everything. And then when that happens, then the government will dictate how everything will work and you'll have no choice. It'll be too late. You'd be almost like living in a forced airship environment like other socialist countries.
Mm.
But then again, people are so busy politicking that they don't seek to get the correct information. But in due season, my, it's another issue. But it is all about the forced airship thing, right?
Mhm.
The other thing about forced airships is that sometimes when these trusts are being set up, you have to make sure the settler doesn't control the trust. But sometimes settlers like to try to control trusts that are designed to fight against forced airships because they want to maintain control of the assets. And we know from Trust 101 that if you set up a trust, who should control the assets?
Interesting.
The trustee and nobody else.
Right.
Once the settler transfers those assets to the trust, the settler may try to influence the trustee. Sometimes they're successful influencing the trustee. Sometimes the trust allows them to have some kind of influence. But technically, if the trustee allows too much control by the settler, then eventually the beneficiary or somebody else can deem that trust to be a what? Sham trust. You might have heard that word, right?
Yes.
So if you're involved in trusteeship, be careful how much influence the settler has over that trust. Because at some point it might be challenged and deemed to be a sham and shut the trust down. Period. Okay? All right. So the Trustee Act in the Bahamas, of course, have made provisions for us to set up trusts to cover the assets or protect the assets of forced airships and all this kind of stuff. The other reason for setting trusts in jurisdictions like ours is that many other jurisdictions have those taxes Anishka talked about. Remember? Inheritance tax, estate taxes, and all that stuff. In case you didn't know, for example, in countries like the United States and Canada and stuff, where you can actually own property, and estate taxes can be as high as 40 to 50%, which means that when you die, before your beneficiaries inherit the property, the government takes half of the value and put it in the treasury. And if you don't like it, leave. That's just how it works. In other jurisdictions, we have inheritance tax, where there's no tax on the estate, but there's tax on inheritance. So if you live in Canada, United States, UK, or some countries, and you inherit $1 million from your family, your parents, if you live in those places that are subject to inheritance tax, before you get the million, what do you think happens?
They take out their funds first.
Yes, and so if the inheritance tax is 50%, how much does the government get?
50%?
Which is 50% of $1 million.
Oh, 500,000.
Yeah, how much do you get?
500,000.
Is that fair?
No, but at least it's something.
And that's what the government hopes, that you'd shut up and say at least it's something. My point? That's how control works.
Yep.
My point? And that's what you have to be careful with. Otherwise, the whole life of people become at least a something. And that's what they want you to become, because that's then how they exercise and exert total control over you. Okay? That's why in certain countries people are protesting, because they're sick and tired of being controlled. Have any of you ever been controlled in your life, like a controlling boyfriend or girlfriend, a controlling flicking parent, a controlling whoever it is?
Of course.
Is it a good feeling?
Oh, no.
The same thing happens on a governmental level. Sooner or later, as they keep pressing you and controlling, you're going to get enough. But they're hoping you don't get enough and say, well, at least I got something. Oh, like them old people, oh, Jesus. At least something is better than nothing. That's what they want. So, because as long as people can be kept in the something is better than nothing category, I'll eat your lunch. That's really the objective. Okay? That's why Bill Gates and company and the rest of them think they're gods. Imagine how shocking it's going to be when they finally realize that they're just flicking mere mortals.
People.
Yes, like the rest of us. My. All right, thank you very much, Anisha. Anisha, are you there?
No, I'm not here.
Where are you?
I'm over there.
Which is where? Wherever you are, can you pick it up, Anisha?
Okay. Another consider.
I like that. I'm not doggone here. Call Kermit. Don't worry, I have Kermit on my radar. Wherever he is, I'll be calling him next. If he disappears, we're gonna hold him liable for doggone disappearing. Okay, keep going.
Another consideration that must be made in relation to the application of forced airship laws is the fact that Bahamian trust companies with parent companies, branches, or affiliate companies in jurisdictions with such laws and in the domicile of the assets of their foreign settlers may be penalized for non-compliance with its laws and compelled to provide information on its clients, albeit reluctantly. The Trust Choice of Governing Law Act 1989, the Act, and Trust Choice of Governing Law Amendment Act as amended, both enable Bahamian Trust to address and overcome attacks by foreign beneficiaries from jurisdictions with forced airship laws. The laws are specifically designed to address conflict of laws in civil law jurisdictions, which may affect or invalidate dispositions in Bahamian Trust.
Take a minute, Anisha. In other words, because settlers from forced airship jurisdictions like the countries we talked about can come into jurisdictions like the Bahamas and set up a trust. Oftentimes, the governments and the beneficiaries of those countries are not happy about that for obvious reasons. And as a result, oftentimes beneficiaries who live in the foreign country, like Spain or Italy or whatever, they bring action to attack the Bahamas or other offshore trusts to see if they can have the trust voided so that they can have access to what?
So what to them?
The assets in the trust. Okay? But because of our Trust Choice of Governing Law Act in the Bahamas, it makes it difficult, if not impossible, for them to do so. Because the trust established in the Bahamas is governed by which law? Bahamian law.
Mhm.
So you could bring action, Mr. Wherever you are, or Miss wherever you are, but if it doesn't conform with Bahamian law, you will not be successful. And for the most part, most of them are not successful. And that's why they're so popular. Okay, keep going.
The Trust Choice of Governing Law Act 1989 allows a foreign settler, whether he is a resident in the Bahamas or not, to declare the laws of the Bahamas as the proper or governing law of a trust which he creates. And such a declaration will be legally valid, effective, and conclusive, notwithstanding the forced heirship or other laws within his country regarding the disposition of assets within the trust. The Act specifically has provisions which address the importance of Bahamian law being the proper law of the trust. It states primarily that the original proper law of the trust may be changed to or from the laws of the Bahamas in certain circumstances, where the trust instrument so provides. It also states that where a term of the trust allows certain aspects of the trust or the administration of the trust to be governed by Bahamian law, that term would be conclusive and evidence that the settler intended the laws of Bahamas to govern the trust. Trust assets such as real property in the Bahamas and personal property located elsewhere in the world will be governed by Bahamian law under Bahamian trust and not the forced heirship laws of another country. It should be noted, however, that under international private law, as it relates to real property in any country or jurisdiction, the law of lex situs,
Yes. Some
law,
people call it citus, some people call it situs, either one.
okay, that is the law where the real property is situated, governs so there may be specific local laws within a settler's country which may be applicable to foreign real property assets within a Bahamian trust.
Let me just say this in case you guys come across it in the future. Lex really is the Latin word for laws. Okay, so it's a common expression used by lawyers and in a legal context. And situs or situs is also a Latin word, which is where situation comes from, or situated, which is why we use the word situated oftentimes when we're talking about real property transaction. Lot number 10, block 3, situated in Fox Hill, or wherever the location might be. That's where all of that stuff originated back in the day, from Latin, like so many other legal and other expressions, and English expressions, by the way. Okay, keep going.
To overcome any impediments such as the law of the lex situs and other conflict of laws, trust officers and wealth managers normally recommend that foreign assets be converted to Bahamian assets before being placed into a Bahamian trust. A Bahamian company, normally an IBC, is created to purchase a foreign property in exchange for shares in the company. The shares in the Bahamian company, which represent ownership interest in the foreign assets, are then transferred to a Bahamian trust, which is governed by Bahamian law. Additionally, under the Act, any questions in relation to a trust where Bahamian law is the governing law or the disposition of property within such a trust shall be determined in accordance with the laws of Bahamas. These questions may include questions regarding the legal validity of the trust, the capacity of the settlor, the nature and extent of the powers within the trust, the disposition of trust assets, and the administration of the trust. The act enables a foreign settler to make provisions for his spouse during his lifetime and for his children after his death, if he so desires. He is also able to dispose of his property to his spouse and children in ways which may be more pragmatic and beneficial to them, considering their particular circumstances.
Thank you, Anisha. Another mouthful about forced airships. I think you probably have a better grasp now about how the governing law works. It's designed to protect foreign settlers. Notice it doesn't matter whether the foreign settler lives in the Bahamas or not. It allows for the Bahamas to be designated as the jurisdiction for all legal matters pertaining to that trust, and therefore all decisions will be made in accordance with Bahamian law, not the law of any other jurisdiction. The whole idea again behind this is to transfer assets. Notice in the Bahamas, we have a very unique situation with regards to foreign assets, especially where there are citrus assets, property, and maybe some certain special assets even, let's not forget them, where we suggest to foreign settlers to convert the assets to Bahamian assets by purchasing them and issuing shares to the trustee so that the trustee is holding the shares and therefore the right to the property. This allows the Bahamian Trust to effectively manage the property, take responsibility for the property, and to protect it should any beneficiaries or anybody else try to have the trust declared null and void. Notice almost to the end of page 79, some of the conditions that may be raised to try to invalidate a trust that is governed by Bahamian law. For example, beneficiaries might try to test and question the legal validity of the trust. Is it a valid trust? Is it a sham trust or not? Does it meet all the requirements for a trust and so on? And again, this is all designed to try to bust the trust so that those assets can be taken back into the forced airship countries. Okay? Does the settler have the capacity, mental and otherwise, to settle the trust? What are the powers given in the trust? Because remember, if the settler has too much powers, the courts could deem the trust to be what? A sham trust. If it is, then whoever's bringing the action will be successful in shutting down the trust and taking possession of those assets. How are those assets distributed and how is it administrated? So all of these things are designed, have to be locked tight by Bahamian trustees to make sure that there are no loopholes for somebody who wants to contest or threaten the trust to get access to the assets in those trusts. And for the most part, we do that pretty well. Kermit, are you there? Oh, gone it. Where did Kermit go?
Okay, settle. Want me continue?
I do.
I am
Oh, he
here,
there.
Mr. Wilkinson.
Oh, you are there. Wonderful. Hang on, because I'm going to call you in a minute. But before I call you, I want you guys to see something else about choice of law, because it is oftentimes a very contentious issues in trusts that people don't really get to deal with or want to deal with until there's a problem. Most of the time we hold our heads in the sand until something goes wrong and then everybody's scrambling to fix the problem. All right, so I want you to look at this for a few moments before we go on in terms of the trustee's liability with regards to foreign trusts. Okay, very, very.
Oh, that's a video. Okay.
Yeah, very, very important area of the trustees' work. We have a lot of foreign trusts in the Bahamas, A lot of the cases that we hear, we don't hear when something goes wrong. It's done quietly for obvious reasons. It's not in the Tribune. It's not even in the Punch. That's how quiet it is. If the Punch doesn't get it, then you know it's quiet. All right. So let's have a look at this forced airship thing. This is a Singaporean experience, but the key here, Singapore is a forced airship country like Spain and Italy and those kinds of European countries. So it's a very interesting perspective because a lot of people feel like Singapore is more like Western countries like ours, but in many instances, they act and behave like European countries for whatever reason. So in this case, Singapore is the foreign country, and Singapore has issues with persons trying to set up trusts in offshore jurisdictions like the Bahamas. Let's see what some of the comments are before we get on to Kermit to finish us.
Okay, so before we look at a prevalence of foreign trusts that are locally administered in Singapore and whether or not these foreign trusts import great levels of protection than we are afforded in Singapore.
Mr. Wilkinson,
Hi.
they sound a bit distorted to me. They ain't clear enough.
Okay, hang on in there. Let me increase my volume and see if that helps.
And whether or not these are going to be enforceable.
That's better?
No, it's not the same.
It still sounds confuddled?
The song, yeah, muffled.
That's I know. That's part of the reason because that's how these guys are talk. This guy anyway. I don't know who he must be from. I don't know where. But he sounds like he's choking his words like
Right, he eating multi-talking.
there you go. You got it. Like he's bloody eating. From the picture, it doesn't look like he's eating, but that's how he sounds. Like for some stranger, let's try it again, see what happens.
Okay.
Now, this is an interesting one because we obviously have the phenomena of foreign law.
Is that better?
No, I probably just put it to my ears. See if I can.
Okay. Kermit, what do you hear? Kermit again.
I heard everything. I didn't have no issue with it.
Okay, Anishka, what did you hear? Anishka. Okay, I guess Anishka will join us shortly. Okay, so Anisha, hang in there.
Okay.
Hang in there, Anisha. It might just be a transmission. Let's see if it gets better.
Okay.
Okay.
Trusts being locally administered in Singapore. I don't know if there's any actual statistics out there, but they do exist and they are here. And the question is, will protections contained in a locally administered foreign law trust be enforceable in Singapore? Particularly in the context where Singapore court is exercising its supervisory function over, let's say, the protector or the local trustee, and all of the assets, let's say, are in Singapore, and the beneficiaries are in Singapore. And the only thing that's foreign is the proper law of the trust. And I say that because of the Kochiani decision in the Privy Council. Now, this is obviously conjecture, okay, so there's no right answer here. But the question being asked is, could a Singapore court looking at the facts of the particular trust and looking at the fact that the only foreign element of it is the proper law, seek to apply Singapore law to the circumstances of that?
So in this case, we have an interesting situation where the trust is located in Singapore. However, even the beneficiaries are in Singapore. What is different and unique is that the choice of law jurisdiction is not Singapore. The choice of law jurisdiction is the Bahamas or the Cayman or the BVI. So now Singapore has a unique problem in terms of if the trust is being administered locally in Singapore, but the choice of law jurisdiction is the Bahamas or Cayman, then we're going to have trouble accessing those assets in our forced airship environment, and it's going to create a problem for Singapore beneficiaries who want to bust that particular trust for whatever reason or attack it. And so this is kind of a little discussion about the uniqueness of the choice of law jurisdiction trust. The trust itself doesn't even have to be in the Bahamas or in Cayman, but if the Bahamas or Cayman is designated as the choice of law, then any issues pertaining to that trust, no matter where it's located, will have to be heard in accordance with what? Anybody? In accordance with Bahamian law. Okay? All right.
Yes, and in this regard, the terms of the foreign law provisions, particularly, let's say, dealing with liability exposure of a protector or a reserve power holder. I just wanted to get a feel for what we felt the Singapore's court's approach would be if we do have a scenario where the foreign law provides much more protections than a domestic Singapore trust would provide, and but all of the parties are in Singapore. Would it be possible, on the basis of Kachiani, for the Singapore court to maybe disapply some of those provisions? I'd ask Luchan, what's your view on this one?
Yeah, I mean, I think starting point would be sort of, you can have a characterization question as a matter of PIL, private international law, as to, what issues are governed by, the local law versus, the foreign law, right? So some provisions, might be outside the scope of the trust itself. For example, if somebody challenged a particular transfer into the trust, then in that sort of situation, whatever clause of jurisdiction you had and so on, and governing law will not help you. Then you have a sort of a group of clauses that are dealing with largely internal claims, and beneficiary claims are largely internal claims. Then in that cases, I think the proper law would be followed to the extent that Singapore's own general PIL principles would point there. Whether jurisdiction, if you did require only the foreign court to have jurisdiction, whether that might be followed, I think that is less clear, because court has the discretion to maintain jurisdiction, and an exclusive jurisdiction clause may not bind the beneficiary to the same extent. Right? There's a nice debate about how far you can do that, even in the case of trust arbitration clauses. So different clauses may have different impacts, but I think on proper law we would apply our PIL. The override to that is quite limited. It's public policy, but that's quite limited. A simple example of that, not perhaps related to breach, is if you have a clause that is perpetual, right? It's a clause that's perpetual under foreign law, and it's that, yeah, will that work? I would say probably does work, and stacks of USD trusts that are administered by Singapore trustees. So many things will point to PIL, and there is a possibility of a public policy override, but it's probably not that one.
Any views, Victor Woodham, on this one?
I'll just add in maybe to explain to the attendees the difference, right, between a situation and a trust and a normal contractual provision, right? So in a normal contractual provision, you would not have the Singapore courts saying that the law, which was governing law, which was chosen, which would apply. But in the case of trust, and I think there's an argument that the Singapore courts, or the courts in general, have that inherent jurisdiction to supervise, and the weight to be given to such clauses is less than in contractual cases. But I would think that the default position would be to still recognize the governing law provided, and then maybe in very, very, very narrow cases to persuade the court otherwise.
Abraham, any views on this?
I concur. So we look at it at different levels. Number one is privity of contract, and so contract is made, it's valid. The courts would generally give credence to what was the choice of law expressly stated. So if there's no challenge to validity, that there was fraud or the person did not have mental capacity to choose the right law, so then that would be given. So the default position would be that the foreign law would be recognized, then you call for foreign legal experts to give the evidence. And I agree with Len Chuan and Bigna that by and large, the Singapore courts would allow the foreign legal provisions to apply unless it's clearly against Singapore public policy, which is extremely difficult in the case of a private trust.
Tony, from your perspective, what's your view on administering foreign law trusts in Singapore? Do you worry, or what's the issue internally on? And we rely on all of these provisions in Singapore to worry about the potential for Singapore to disapply any of this. Yeah, it's part of the function.
I mean, I think think that there's a risk that they won't. I do, from a practical point of view, I do think that we take the view that what you need to really look at is the original intention and the original purpose of that trust structure. I think if you look at the Kochiani case, I mean, there was so much shape shifting with that scenario that it was almost incumbent on the Privy Council to step in and do something about that. And I would think and hope that the Singapore courts would do the same. But I think if all going all being equal, if the trust is following its original intention, even if and even if the settler wanted to change it afterwards, if we actually stuck and enforced that original thing, I think the courts would apply the foreign law.
Right.
So, folks, basically, as you can see, even though the trust is being administered in Singapore, the choice of law jurisdiction is an offshore jurisdiction, and the general feeling is how comfortable are the trustees in Singapore with the choice of law not being in Singapore. And what they're saying basically is they are generally comfortable unless some reason comes up to show that the trust was not established in good faith. In other words, that it was a sham trust of some kind, or what we call a fraudulent trust. Okay? And so the case that they refer to, Kochiani, is obviously a case that was the exception, so exceptional that it ended up to the Privy Council, which is the highest court in the land for Commonwealth countries. That's the same court that we use as our highest court whenever we can't come to a decision at the Supreme Court level in the Bahamas. Singaporeans use the same Privy Council because they are a Commonwealth country as well. And whatever happened with Kochiani, it was clearly gross and significant enough for it to end up to the Privy Council to make a final ruling. But the general feeling is Singapore has no problems with having a foreign law jurisdiction as long as the trust has been established in good faith. All right. Kermit, are you there?
Yes, sir, I am here.
Okay, let it rip, Kermit. The bottom of page 79. Settlers may.
Okay, so settlers may or may not wish to provide for beneficiaries after their death, which they may have already made provisions during their lifetime by way of monetary investment or disposition of real property.
What does disposition mean? Anybody? What does disposition mean?
Like disbursement? No, no.
Yeah, it's kind of disbursement. In other words, what that little paragraph is saying is sometimes some settlers don't leave anything for their beneficiaries because they gave them as much as they planned to give them before they died. You follow? Either in the form of cash,
okay.
or investments, or the disposition or the disbursement of property. So your father or your parents might come to you and say, okay, we're giving you what you're entitled to before we die. That piece of property over there is yours, and we're having it put in your name because it's yours. So when they die, you shouldn't be expecting any kind of that property to show up in the will for you because you already have it. They've already given it to you. Okay? So a lot of times when certain things are not left in the will is because people have already gotten what folks want them to have before they die. Okay?
Okay.
All right. Keep going.
The Trust Choice of Governing Law Amendment Act 1996 helped to clarify the definition of heirship rights under the original act and invalidated the enforcement of foreign judgments relating to inheritance and matrimonial rights under forced heirships laws in the Bahamas. Recent amendments to the Trust Choice of Governing Law Amendment Act 2016 provides for enhanced protection for trust and attempted enforcement of judgments arising from family disputes and forced heirship rules.
In other words, folks, as you can see, 2016 is fairly recent, isn't it?
Yes,
All
yes.
right. Which means that this stuff is not old school, old tales. This is very current. Okay. And the reason why it's very current is because beneficiaries in forced heirship countries are continuing to try to bust trusts that have been established in our jurisdictions to see if they can get their hands on the assets of those trusts so that they can do what they want to do with them, notwithstanding the settlers' wishes. Okay? They want to bust them so that they can be distributed according to the laws of the country in which they reside or live. Okay? Or were born. All right. Keep going.
Okay. Asset protection, asset protection trust. And there probably was a delay in my internet. Settlers may establish trusts known as asset protection trusts in the Bahamas. These trusts are created by the settler upon transfer. So you can hear me,
I
right?
can clearly.
Yes.
Okay. No, because the video was freezing, so I wasn't sure if y'all could
Oh,
hear me.
very clearly.
So that's why I thought my internet was freaking out.
No way. You fine.
Okay. So I start. Okay. So settlers may establish trusts known as asset protection trusts in the Bahamas. These trusts are created by the settler upon transfer of his assets to the trust, subject to the terms of the trust to protect his assets, normally from future or potential creditors. The Fraudulent Dispositions Act 1991 was enacted to protect assets protection trusts in the Bahamas from claims from future or unexpected creditors who may wish to attack such trusts. The Fraudulent Disposition Act makes provisions that every disposition which is transferred to a trust with the intent to defraud or at an undervalue will be voidable
Yes.
at the instance of the creditor who has been duly prejudiced.
Now stick a pin, Kermit. Let me just say this while we're on it. Sometimes people, settlers, create trusts to hide assets from creditors so that the creditors cannot seize them to pay off their loans. You follow?
Okay.
If it is established,
Yes.
if it is established that a trust was established for that reason, under the Fraudulent Dispositions Act 1991 in the Bahamas, that trust will be voided and the assets will be made available to creditors. Do you follow that?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
However, if the trust is established in good faith and not found to be established to avoid creditors, then in the future, such a trust will be very beneficial and very protective of assets for any future loans that you might get, not the ones you already have. Right? All right, keep going.
Okay. The aggrieved creditor has the burden of proving that the settler of the asset protection trust intended to defraud him slash it and is required to commence legal action within 2 years of the date of the disposition. Therefore, to successfully prove the creditor's case and for the transfer or disposition of the property into the Bahamian Asset Protection Trust to be voidable, the following requirements must be met. One, the settler's debt or liability to the creditor must have existed at the time of the transfer or disposition of the property. 2, the transfer must have been at an undervalue. 3, there must have been an intent to defraud the creditor when the transfer or disposition was made. 4, the creditor must have been prejudiced due to the transfer or disposition. And 5, the creditor must bring an action within 2 years from the transfer of the disposition. If successful, the creditor will effectively have the transfer or disposition set aside and be made voidable in relation to the Bahamian Asset Protection Trust.
Okay, great. In other words, you can set up an asset trust account to protect your assets as long as you're setting it up to protect it against future creditors, future people you're going to borrow from. As you can see, it's a pretty long list of things that you can be in violation of if you owe people now and you try to hide your assets. Settlers oftentimes try to hide their assets from people they owe money to, called creditors, and sometimes they try to hide their assets from their spouses in the form of a trust, so that if there's a divorce, that the spouse cannot find certain assets. Okay. In this case, we're talking about creditors, and we're saying in the Bahamas, we don't have a problem establishing an asset protection trust, but not for loans that you currently owe. They will have to be set up for loans that you might get in the future, but not loans that you have presently. That's the point. And if you found trying to hide them, then you will find yourself. Somebody just joined us. S. Shadell. Is that you, Shadell?
I don't know, Shadell.
Yes, it is. I was back a little while.
Oh.
My connection had dropped, so I'm back now.
Doggone it. I know. I saw the big S come up again.
Yes, sir.
All right. So were you able to see that video on Singapore?
Partially, but I have to go back and review it, the whole thing, because it isn't coming through too loud on to my connection.
Okay.
It's very low.
No problem. No problem at all. All right. Okay. So that's basically how the asset protection situation works in the Bahamas and jurisdictions similar to ours, like Cayman, BVI, and Guernsey, and the rest of those guys. All right. The only other thing we have left on our agenda are two things. I have to show you my clip on asset protection because the guy had some interesting things to say about asset protection as an extension in another jurisdiction called the United States, which is always a nice jurisdiction to hear from because they're so close to us and a lot of our things are very similar. And then it's only a few moments, and then when we're done with Tom Jones and Iowa or somewhere, we'll take a few moments and go through the self-assessment questions, and then after that you can go shopping or some such thing. All right, any questions so far? Okay, great.
No.
Great. I'm just trying to find my clip here. Okay, there we go. Where is it? Asset protection. Okay. Let's turn this up a bit here. See if that helps. You guys see that guy? Lee Phillips?
Yeah, I can see it.
Okay. So Lee's going to have a little chit chat. He's not going to run on too long, thank God. And then we'll do our questions and then we'll be done for today. Do you guys have any sessions other than this one?
You mean
for today?
Or you mean like for the course?
Oh, not today, for the course.
Yeah, we have several more.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're like in the middle of this madness.
Yeah.
So you're not So you're not writing no questions for the exam, for the final exam, Mr. Wilkinson?
I might very well be. I'll be finding that out, I'm sure, before you guys are done.
Okay.
So, not to worry. If I have any questions to write, they'll be very appropriate to our discussions. There won't be any surprises like you have to go into the deep blue sea. Okay? Has anybody told you whether your what type of examination you will have yet?
Oh, no. What type does it usually be?
Well, it can be
multiple choice.
Yeah, the format varies depending on the group.
I never see it on the multiple choice.
I never see no multiple choice.
It was always essay.
You always have essay. Hey, you always have an essay question.
Yeah, it's usually essay questions. That's why I was telling you about the Bartlett case, that you need to know it, because it's only one of the cases that's likely to come up in your essay questions. Okay?
Okay.
And of course,
thanks.
You know, the key to essay questions is being able to respond to the key points. Okay? A little detail in form of 1 or 2 examples is always helpful in any essay question, along with the key points of each particular essay. For example, usually there's a case behind it, not always, but if there's a case behind the essay question for point of reference, or you have a case that you can use, remember, just talk about the key points of the case. If it's not case related, whatever the question is, talk about the key points of the question. Okay, for example, if you get an essay question that says describe the context of forced airships and asset protection as they relate to the Bahamas or similar offshore jurisdictions, well, I hope you can tell right away the key points you need to be talking about as far as forced airships and asset protection is concerned. And make sure you discuss all the key points relevant to the question. Because the more key points you mention, the more points you are likely to
receive.
Yes. If you just try to give a little itsy bitsy 1 or 2 points, you might get 1 or 2 points, even though they're correct, because you didn't say enough in terms of the key points of the question. So keep that in mind. Don't run on until forever and ever thy kingdom come, because you have a limited time. But mark your time.
Yeah, because the exams just be so long, and it's don't be enough time.
Absolutely.
We have essay questions, and them things is being this, which means they looking for a lot of information.
Yeah.
And there's like 10 or 12 questions, like 10 questions, 12 questions, something like that.
You got it, Kermit. You hit the nail right on the head.
I still think that's too much for 3 hours. That's a lot.
It is too much.
It takes the full. They have to come and say exam over for me to stop writing. That's how
Because
it is take up the full time.
Yeah, because the
You could barely think.
Sorry. I know. Unfortunately, examinations really are not designed for you to think.
You have to think and put them in. You can't even, I don't know. That just seems like a lot.
No,
10.
Every examination.
Well, there's no time to go back over what you write before.
No,
trying to finish all the questions.
No, you could barely finish the question, and I ran into a jam the last essay, the last test.
So
I was just finishing 3 questions, and I was an hour and a half gone. So I was like, my finger was numb when I was finished.
Well, how many hours did you have?
3.
It's only 3 hours for 10 questions, and like I said, the majority of them is the essay.
Yeah.
That's all.
Here's what I'm gonna say to you. How many minutes are in 3 hours?
Oh Lord. That's 60 times 3. That's 188. 6 3 is 18. Oh my gosh.
6 3s are still 18. Can you believe it or not? I know we're so used to
the calculator, man. The calculators have you down.
We don't want to use our brains anymore, but it's still 18. So that's 180 minutes, right?
Right.
So if you have 10 questions, you take 180 minutes and divide it by what?
10.
Divided by what?
10.
10 questions.
Yeah, but 18 minutes per question, that, I don't know.
We talking about deep depth. Hold on, Mr. Wilkinson. The
Like,
questions don't be like in the back of this book, you know. Like, I mean, in terms of like how the assessment questions is in the back of this book, it don't be like that. It's be legit essay. So you have to put a beginning, you gotta put a middle, you gotta put an end, they gotta be.
Thank you, Kermit. Thank
They
you.
gotta quote certain parts of the law and all kind of things.
That's right.
Kermit,
Put it on him, Kermit. Let him know, please.
tell you a secret.
I just hope you have prayer, Mr. Wilkinson, if you marking these exams, you know.
But then on the other hand, if we have less questions, that means it makes it harder to get a good point.
Aha. Somebody had the ability to think out the box. There are pros and cons to all examinations. And whether you guys believe it or not, I have written more examinations that you would probably ever write in your 2 lifetimes and your children. What I'm saying is, I know exactly what you mean. Been there,
Done it.
I didn't start my life giving examinations and writing them and marking them. I started my life writing them. Tons and tons of flicking examinations of the worst kind. All right, trust examination, series 7, 6-hour examination, counting degrees examination, MBA examination, freaking ICA examination. Trust me, I have seen every type of examination you could think of. I agree, they suck, but you have to plan them and you have to execute accordingly. So, if you have 10 questions, you have 20 minutes for each question. Some of them may take 20, some of them may take 30, give or take 10 minutes. What you have to do is start writing immediately and just answer the important points and then move on. When 25 flicking minutes up, stop writing. Move on to the next one. That's how you do it. It's called examination technique. You're never going to get all of everything in the time. When 25 minutes is up, stop writing on that question. Otherwise, you'll die the death later. Start writing the other question. When 25 minutes is up, stop writing on that question. Start the other question. What is the key? To get as much points for each question and to get through all of them so that when they add them up, you get something reasonable. But if you get stuck on the first 5 or 6 or 7 and don't get to the rest, dog, eat your lunch. How's that?
Yep.
Just be generous. Just take it easy.
Funny. Nobody's at the hell with you and your technique. Just freaking be generous. Point well taken. All right. But while you're thinking about it, think about the technique I just gave you. If you never tried it before, try it this time. See what happens. At the end of the day,
I had to do that last exam because, like I say, at a certain point, I couldn't take no. I had to just go on to something else because you couldn't wait. You couldn't think, oh, what else I could put in this question. I just had to keep on going on.
Good. Did you pass the exam?
I was told I passed the exam. I don't know.
What's the difference between pass it and was told you passed it?
Oh, because I don't know the exact score.
It's the same thing to me.
Notice I didn't.
I was told I passed the first passed the first part of it, but I don't know the score.
How come you know the score?
Because I ain't finished paying for the course. They're not going to tell me the whole thing, and I ain't finished paying for the course yet.
That's true.
My company don't pay for this. I have to pay for it, so
you wouldn't know until it's over.
Yeah.
But that's okay. You got through the first part.
Yes.
Great. So that means that technique worked. Do it again for the second part. And I guarantee you, unless you wrote complete nonsense, you should be okay. And I'm sure you wouldn't be writing complete nonsense. All right? So allocate the time. When the time is up, stop. Move on to the next question. The key is to answer all the questions in the best form you can by stopping at 20, 25 minute allocations and moving on. If you do that, you should be successful, assuming that what you're writing is reasonable. All right. So while we soothe our minds on that, let's see what Lee has to say about the assets. Is that reggae?
I know it ain't coming from me. I know it's coming from.
Ain't me.
Anishka, are you playing like Bob Marley?
Sorry, that's coming from Let me mute and tell the video over. Sorry.
You don't have to mute it. You can just
Turn it off.
unless you're listening to us and reggae at the same time. Anushka?
No, sorry, that's my background. It's not my music, though, but that's my background. Okay.
I know.
I have on my earbuds, so I tuned that out. I was only listening to y'all.
Okay, wonderful. Welcome back. All righty then. So let's see what Lee has to say. Then we're going to do our questions and then we're going to be done. All right.
I'm an attorney. I want to talk to you for a minute about what they call asset protection trusts. Really doesn't mean a lot to me. However, it's becoming more and more used as a trust that is irrevocable. That means that you can't revoke it, obviously. It also means that when you put property into it, you can't get it back. You have given the property to the trust. And that puts it outside of your creditor's reach. It's an asset protection trust. We have a number of these types of trusts. The Chose Trust under 2503 is a type of asset protection trust. You give the property away to the trust. It's then used for the benefit of the children. And technically, we've given it away. The property is now outside of your estate, so it's always been an estate planning tool as well, because if we move an asset out and then that asset blossoms into something of great value, it's already outside of your estate. We call it an estate tax freeze. People are always worried about estate taxes these days because the estate tax limit is a lot higher than it used to be. So the irrevocable trusts are less popular for estate tax planning. However, they are still very liable for asset protection. Now, the trust that we call an asset protection trust generally is starting to be known as a trust that's created by a state that protects assets within the trust. The first one was created in 1997 up in Alaska, and they created this Alaskan trust.
Now, bear in mind, this is the U.S. version. We have our own asset protection trusts that we create in the Bahamas and in other jurisdictions like ours. But the principle of asset protection remains the same. In the United States, it started out with the Alaskan Trust. So anybody who wants an asset protection trust would go to Alaska or talk to somebody in Alaska, as they would talk to somebody in the Bahamas or the Cayman or BVI. Okay? Same principle, different perspective, same principle.
People always talk about the Alaskan trust. You moved your property into the trust after it had been there for, I think, 4 or 5 years, 3 to 5, depending on which state you're in. Then it locked down and it became free from the claims of creditors. There's some problems with it. We'll talk about it in 2 seconds, but it was pretty good. And why would Alaska do this? Well, they wanted to bring money into their banking system, the trust departments and banks.
This is what we want in the Bahamas as well. We want to bring in assets and money into our system as well. So we're like the Alaskans and other people. We're not just doing it because we are nice, sweet trustees.
So you had to have a trustee of the trust, which was a bank in Alaska. Now, some states have passed laws which say that any resident of the state can be a trustee. You can be a co-trustee. There are lots of variations on this. The states are Alaska, Mississippi, Ohio, Tennessee, Colorado, Delaware, Missouri, Nevada, Oklahoma, Rhode Island, Utah, Virginia, Hawaii, New Hampshire, South Dakota, and Wyoming. Currently. And that we may add states or they may drop off. The problem with it is you put the asset into the trust, and then over a period of time, after the period of time, then it locks down and the creditors can't get to it. Utah actually has the best asset protection trust right now. If you publish in the newspaper, then you can lock down the assets within 60 days. That's pretty cool, guys. But at any rate, it locks down very quickly compared to the 3 to 5 years that many other states have. So you lock it down, now you get a judgment against you. Well, we've got a couple of problems here. One, states will not recognize laws in other states that are against their public policies. It may be against the public policy to go hide assets in your state from my creditors in my state. The other thing is we have what's called a Full Faith and Credit Act, which means that if a judgment is given in one state, another state has to recognize the judgment. So if I get a judgment in this state and my creditors have access to my assets, will Utah not recognize that judgment and not force those assets within the trust to be given over? There are lots of questions in this now. Is that if I put a piece of property in Nevada or in Ohio into a trust in Utah, isn't that property still going to be basically subject to the laws of the state of Ohio? The site is state where it is. These things we don't quite know yet on these asset protection trusts. Relatively expensive to set up, long period to lock down, and they have other things they're called legacy trusts because they will last for 1,000 years. Yeah, right. 1,000 years ago, we still got 400, 500 years before the United States or America was going to be discovered by Columbus. And you're going to manage your property for that long? But at any rate, we've got all of these moving elements in these asset protection trusts that we don't know about. They are becoming more popular. I will give you that. More states continue to add on their version of the asset protection trust. So it's something you need to look for, watch for, and pay attention to because it might save your city someday.
All right. Any thoughts on Lee Phillips' comments?
Hello and welcome to Fridays with Vistage. My name's Bill Black. I'm a Vistage member and the
No thoughts on it.
Okay, so you get the general idea then about how asset protection trusts work. You can set it up, we have provisions, but if you're trying to hide assets, sorry, from creditors or people you owe money to, you can expect a fight. They're not going to lie down and play dead and let you hide the assets that they need to sell off to pay your debt. But whether you're aware of it or not, whether you're knowledgeable about it or not, people are often hiding assets in the millions of dollars in order that creditors whom they owe millions of dollars to cannot find those assets, sell them off in order to pay off the debt. We do have persons in the Bahamas who are aware of these tricks, quote unquote. If you're doing it to hide from creditor, it's fraudulent. If you're doing it to protect assets from future attacks, it's legal. It's all about context and intent. Okay, something to think about if you're answering a question on asset protection trusts. See, that's my point. The more key points you know and can write down quickly, the more points you can accumulate in the allotted time for each question. That's the whole idea. It's never going to be a perfect situation, ever. I wish it was. All right, so let's do our questions then on the self-assessment for forced airships and asset protection, and then we'll be free to go and do our thing today. All right, number one, what are forced airship laws? Anyone?
Forced airship laws are prevalent in several jurisdictions such as France, Spain, and Italy, and Islamic countries such as Saudi Arabia.
Okay, absolutely. Anybody has anything to contrary? That's pretty much what it is. What kind of provisions do we have under forced airship laws again? How do they work? Like, what are they designed to do? For the government to tell you how your property will be disbursed to your heirs and your dependents. That's really the key aspect of forced airships, including their locations and jurisdictions. Okay. If you're writing any comments on that, you must say those.
Say that again, Mr. Wilkinson.
Forced airship laws.
Yeah.
They are laws that regulate the disposition of your assets to your dependents. In other words, the government will tell you by law how your dependents will share your assets. You do not get to decide that as the owner of those assets. Any question you're answering on forced airship must start with that.
Got it.
Right. Number two, that's an interesting question. Anybody read question two?
I thought it was a statement. That's a question.
No, it is a statement. But what is the purpose of the statement? Like, what do you, the statement doesn't tell you what you should do with the statement. Notice that? Yeah, it sounds like a true or false, agree or disagree statement.
Yeah.
So for the purposes of convenience, it doesn't say what true or false or agree or disagree. We're going to assume it's a true or false question. If it is a true or false question, what's the answer?
It'll be section 3 of the trustee act, though. They didn't put the section 3 part, but other than that, it seems to be true.
It seems to be.
It seems to be true.
It seems.
I guess they could just add that it was section 3 of trustee act.
Well, in your notes, when you go back to studying it, you'll see that it's very clearly stated in the notes under forced airships, that exact statement, which makes it true. Okay, your homework is to go back and find that statement and prove it's true.
Okay.
But the answer is true. Okay, significant powers are reserved to the settler under the Trustee Act, etc., to allow greater flexibility. If you go back and check that section, you see it's true. Number 3, define an estate tax. What is it?
A tax levied on the estate of a deceased person.
Absolutely. Inheritance tax, number 4.
A tax which is imposed on the heirs of beneficiaries of a deceased person estate.
Does everybody know the difference between the two?
Yes.
Okay. I heard a yes, I heard no no's. I'm going to assume that we all know the difference between the two. Can governments charge both at the same time?
No.
No. Does anybody know why? From your reading. If you ever got to reading. The reason we cannot charge both is because it will be double taxation and it's not allowed. The government may charge either inheritance tax or estate, but not both. Otherwise, it would be considered double taxation. Okay?
But
Nice thing.
Mr. Wilkinson, I mean, the government double taxes all the time. Because when I brought my car over,
yeah,
I had to pay customs duty, and then I had to pay VAT on the customs duty. The 12% on the customs
every
duty.
important.
Well, we talking about double taxation. The point is, they double tax. The government do double tax.
But why do you see that as double tax?
I agree with Kermit. I agree with Kermit on that because I don't think we should.
Well, Kermit, you said you had to pay VAT on what?
On the customs. I had to pay VAT on the customs duty.
So if the car was 10,000 and duty was 5,000, you had to pay VAT on 5,000?
On the 5,000, yes, sir.
Did they tell you why?
No, the customs officer scope. That's what it is, and I must pay it, or they ain't releasing my car.
Well, why do you consider that to be double taxation?
Because if the government is charging customs duty, which is their tax for bringing in the car, right?
Right.
To me directly, and then they say, okay, you paid us the $5,000 for the customs duty that I told you must pay to bring in this car.
Right.
You must also pay me from you directly again 12% on that $5,000. That's double taxing me on the same car.
Well, the government doesn't see that as double taxation in the normal context of double taxation, even though the taxpayer would feel that way. And here's why. Not that I support what the government is doing. Hell no. Because we have to pay VAT on BEC bill, VAT on insurance. There's VAT on every transaction that goes to our bank account, VAT on, and here's the problem. So we could have quadruple, whatever word it is, for taxation. When we start thinking about that, the problem is the reason why they don't see it as double taxation is because duty is a duty tax. VAT is a transaction tax. And even though it's two taxes, and we could say two means double, that's not the perception, nor is that how it's understood in the context of taxation. You follow? So yeah, Clement, you have a point, but the governments who do this thing across the Caribbean and around the world, we're not the only one who charge VAT on duty. That's the other thing. But they don't see it as a double taxation, unfortunately, even though we are suffering under all the different types of taxes. They can come back and say, well, at least you don't have income tax. At least you don't have inheritance tax. At least you're not seeing and then say, as if they're doing us a favor. And in a way, they may be doing us a favor because soon they'll implement those things too for you guys. I won't be here. I'll be on cloud nine having a martini. But for those of you who are younger, it's only a matter of time in the future somewhere where, in addition to VAT and all that other stuff, you're going to have to pay income tax, inheritance tax, and whatever your parents leave you, if they leave you anything at all, if they have anything to leave at all, and all this kind of stuff. So the madness is only just begun. Sorry. But that's a good point, Kermit. Yeah, it does come off as a double because it's all these little bits and pieces. But technically, they'll come to you with a technicality. One is customs duty tax, and the other one is a bloody transaction tax.
Okay.
Stinks either way.
That's called duggery.
Yeah, and if you don't like it, leave your car on the
On the boat.
Yeah, it stinks. That's what happens. At some point, the same governments you vote for in the future are gonna be the same ones who are gonna control your life. And if you don't like it, lump it. Leave it on the boat and go catch the jitney. Okay, that's what it's gonna be. Simple. I mean, it's a problem, but that's what it's gonna be. If you want to sue, you could sue the government and see which court will hear it and how long it will take. And then when they finally rule, they rule according to the legislation that is a bloody transaction tax implemented by the government. It's law. It's a statutory. By the time they're done, you broke trying to sue. Your car is still on the boat, and they take it off and sell it for doggone storage fees.
That's what they could do.
Kermit, and you guys, the future is going to be an interesting time. What you're seeing now with all the stuff we're discussing is only the tip.
The iceberg.
Absolutely. Okay. Sadly, I went to Royal Bank yesterday to pick up. They called me, come and pick up the new debit card. I go to the bank. I'm here just to pick up the card. The security, boy, go to the back, go to the back of the line. And I'm like, but I just need to go and pick up the card from the person at the desk. You still have to go in the back of the line. He started looking the other way, like, the hell with you. I'm like, can I speak with somebody inside? They're all busy, which is basically the hell with you again.
Even how do you say?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, the position is, and nobody came out to inquire as to anything because he's their agent there at the moment. Secret agent, security guard, whatever it is. And their position basically is if you don't want to wait, then leave. You bastard. We don't care if it's gonna take we don't care if it's gonna take 1 minute to sign for the card and you can go. Piss on you. Leave. And that's basically what's going on, Kermit. It's the same thing. You don't pay the 12%. Like they said, leave the car on the boat. And if you leave it too long, they'll sell it for storage. So all of a sudden, the governments that we're electing are the ones that are imposing. Yeah. Okay. Wow.
You don't laugh, you cry.
Yeah, Kermit say, to everyone, yes, I agree. All right, in this chat, it's one of those unfortunate things, but it's not going to get easier. I wish I could say
Nope.
it
Nope.
will.
Nope.
I'm afraid it won't. The guy,
See why I want to move?
yep. Well, that's the other problem now, because now people start moving out, and foreigners got anyway moving in. Uh, but anyway, that's another. But don't forget, don't move too quickly. Check where you're going, because other places where you're going have taxes too. Sometimes
Yeah.
some have more taxes than we have.
Yeah. But at least the wage may be more.
Hopefully. But by the time you get it, well, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully.
Depending on what wage you think you could earn as an alien in somebody else's country.
Mm-hmm.
Like the old people say, that's another issue. But something to consider before you jump on the boat to go. No, sorry, not boat, plane. Oh, either way, the whole thing is what? Complicated. And it's going to get more complicated everywhere you go, anywhere in the world. And remember, if you can get this treatment as a citizen, what will happen sometimes if you're an alien in somebody else's land?
Country.
That doesn't mean you shouldn't go. It just means that you have other
More
issues to
about.
think about. Yeah. And
Yeah.
so to end my story at Royal Bank, the guy said, he looked at me like, are you gonna go on the line or not? He said, you could go on the senior citizen line over this side. And I'm like, what makes you think I'm a senior citizen? And that further confused him and pissed him off. Because basically he didn't want to answer any questions. He wanted me to follow his instructions the first time, even though I was telling him it'll only take 1 minute. Doesn't matter.
Hey.
Right? So that's all I can say. And I guess at the moment he was acting as a trustee for the bank. That all the bastards outside stayed in control, even though we were customers and our money and our cards were where? In the bank, for which they're charging us exorbitant fees to what? Maintain, are they not?
Yep.
And still treating us like what? Bastard children.
Mm-hmm.
My.
I
What can I say?
I had a few customers do that same thing to me. What make you think I'm a senior citizen?
Yeah. And he looked at my hair and my face. I'm like, can't somebody's hair turn white hereditary? I have inherited?
It was stress I have.
No, many
Not my
people
age.
are under 60 whose hair is white for genetic purposes.
Yeah.
Just so women get breast cancer from genetic reasons at 23. It's the same thing. Some people, when they turn 30, their hair is gray.
Yeah, I was growing from I was 20 in my early 20s.
Absolutely. So and you don't want anybody to assume that you're a what?
Elderly person.
Just because your hair is?
Green.
Okay, number 5. What's the answer for number?
First choice of Government Laws Act 1989.
Absolutely. Number 6. Yeah, number 6 was a little tricky, depending on who's looking at it. Number 6. Well, let me help you. Same thing, with an exception. Trust Choice of the Governing Law Amendment Act 1996. Okay?
Amendment Act, okay.
Amendment Act 1996. That is what made the provision for the 1989 Act. The amendment.
Okay.
Came around in 1996.
1996,
All
okay.
right. Number 7.
Fraudulent Dispositions Act 1991.
Yes, 1991. 1991 is a very special year. That's the
That's when
year.
your baby was born.
Not my baby, my first baby, Samuel
Okay.
Wilkinson III. That's not my baby yet. That's another special category. Sorry, I'm still daddy stuck after all these years for some reason. I don't know why. Okay, and I don't care why, I am. All right, so the Fraudulent Disposition Act 1991. Number 8, what requirements must be met? What are the requirements?
The settler debt or liability to the creditor must have existed at the time of the transfer or disposition of the property. 2,
Yeah,
the transfer must have been at undervalue. 3, there must have been an intent to defraud the creditor when the transfer or disposition was made. 4, the creditor must have been prejudiced due to the transfer of disposition. And 5, the creditor must bring an action within 2 years from the transfer of disposition.
thank you very much. If there are no objections to that answer, then we can move right into question 10. If there are any objections to that answer, you may raise them before we go to question 10. Sorry, just keeping it all within the trust spirit. All right, last but not least, define an asset protection trust. Anyone?
These trusts are created by the settler upon transfer of his assets to the trust, subject to the terms of the trust to protect his assets normally from future or potential creditors.
Thank you very much. It's no better or no worse. So if you get any questions pertaining to any of these things, at least in my units, you know what the important issues are. I think I pretty much made them fairly clear. Go ahead and write them down as simply and as briefly as possible. Don't get into long discussions about stuff. Don't like give one word answers either. That's gonna piss off whoever's grading. But you give an answer that is sufficient, not too short and not too extended. If you're giving examples, keep it short. That way you have time to finish or nearly finish. But keep watching your clock. When your time is up for that question, 20 to 25 minutes, I don't care where you are, put a full stop, comma, punctuation or whatever, and move on to the next question. The key is to get to all the questions. And then, if God forbid, you have a few minutes left, you may go back and add some crap somewhere. You follow, folks?
Yes.
You guys have been fantastic. Good luck in all the other sessions that you have left and in your examinations. If you have any questions that you may want to raise along the way, whether they're related to my units or not, if it's another unit and you want to raise it anyway, please send me an email and I'll be happy to respond. Okay?
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Good luck, you guys, and stay safe.
Thank you.
All right,
Take care.
Mr. Jefferson.
Okay, Dr.
Thank you.
Johnson.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Chanel.
Yes, sir. Can you end it? I'm driving now.
No, I know. I was about to say it is fitting that it ends with just you and I. It's been a pleasure. Take care out there.
You've been great. Thank you. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Take care.
Okay, you too, sir.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.